Madam Secretary, can you call the roll?
Chairman Guyman, present. Representative Brass, Representative Broad, present. Representative Bryant, Representative Carrier, Representative Coates, present. Representative DeWitt, Representative Domain, present. Representative Travis Johnson, present. Representative Kerner, present. Representative Lacombe, present. Representative Jacob Landry, present. Representative Mack, present. Representative McCormick, Vice Chair Orgeron, present. Representative Reiser, present. Representative Sawyer, present. Representative Ventrella, and Representative Zerang, present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Point of order, Vice Chair Orgeron.
All right, thank you all the people for the my fantastic HB 770, the term changing on the oyster leases. It's going to be last, and we're going to get, that's what I'm assuming some of the people are leaving for, but we're going to make sure to bring y'all in. We're going to get rid of some other instruments first, free up some chairs so we could all sit for the discussion later. Thank you. And cell phones, don't forget.
Thank you, Vice Chair Orgeron, for making this a great day for us in our committee.
Very welcome.
We'll remind you to silence your cell phones if you haven't done that. We would appreciate it. Let's go House Bill 802 McMakin, presented by Representative Sawyer. You're not going to the table, I think. Representative Sawyer, hold on one second. Ms. Stalder, could you read in House Bill 802?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 802 by Representative McMakin provides with respect to management of watershed restoration, and we do have an amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Stalder. Representative Sawyer on House Bill 802 from your chair.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. This bill creates a conservation fund. I have an amendment at the desk to change the authorship from Rep. McMakin to me.
Okay, so we need to take up an amendment. Ms. Stalder on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is amendment number 2703. It's in your folders and available online. The amendment changes the author of the bill from Representative McMakin to Representative Sawyer.
Thank you, Ms. Stalder. Representative Sawyer, do you have any comments on your amendment?
No, sir.
Okay. Motion to adopt the amendment number 2703. Is there any objection to adopting that amendment? Seeing none, the amendment is adopted. Back on your bill, Representative Sawyer.
Mr. Chairman, I move to voluntarily defer this bill.
All right. Representative Sawyer makes a motion to voluntarily defer HB 802 to be heard at another time. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that bill is deferred. Thank you, Representative Sawyer. We'll take up House Bill 665 by Representative Mack. Ms. Stalder on House Bill 666.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 665 by Representative Mack prohibits hoop nets and seines from being utilized in North Pass and Manchac Pass.
Thank you, Ms. Stalder. On your bill, Representative Mack.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this bill is basically just what Ms. Stalder said. It prohibits hoop nets in North Pass and Pass Manchac from Lake Pontchartrain to I-55. For several years, the camp owners along Pass Manchac and North Pass have been asking for help. The problem is we have, during the summer months, dead catfish. Hundreds and hundreds of dead catfish floating up and down the pass from Lake Pontchartrain to Lake Maurepas. The problem is that the massive amount of catfish that are floating up and down those passes are grouping up and congregating in the boat slips of the camp owners. And it's to the point to where when they go down there on the weekend, the smell is just so terrible that you're not able to enjoy the weekend. And I want to say that they've been asking for help for years, and I've been asking Wildlife and Fisheries for years, and we've just been talking about trying to come up with a solution. But we haven't been able to come up with a solution so far to remedy this problem. I've got some pictures that I'd like to show you as evidence. And let me see if I can run through those pictures real quick on the screen there. Is there a way to make it cover the entire screen? I mean, you can see those dead catfish right there in South Pass. That's South Pass. That's I-55 and Highway 51 right there, coming out of Lake Maurepas. See those dead catfish? I'm gonna run through these slides as quickly as possible. There's more dead catfish along somebody's bank. More dead catfish. Hundreds. If you go in your boat recreational fishing in the past, I do that probably twice a month during the summer months myself. A lot of people in my area do that. The dead catfish by the hundreds are just floating down the pass as you're anchored. Let me run through these just as fast as I can. Look at all the dead catfish. I want to say this about catfish. I did a little Googling to give me the information. But the truth is my life experience when you're dealing with catfish compared to bass or perch is that catfish are just a tougher fish. They don't die easily. They're able to withstand a good bit amount of, low oxygen content in the water, more so than bass and perch and other freshwater fish. Let me run through these pictures. It's a good bit.
Can you enlarge it for you?
Yeah, if you can, that would be great. Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. That's a picture of a hoot net circulating with somehow another alligator got in that net. More pictures of dead catfishes floating by the docks. There's a hoop net full of dead catfish that floated up. This here is a picture from very recent of hoop net anchors, and I guess that's rope used to anchor the hoop net that got caught in a gentleman's prop in his boat. Mr. Chairman, I think what I'd like to do is turn the table over to those that have came to testify and listen to their sides of the story. I want to say this before we do that I've reached out to the hoop netters. I have nothing against commercial fishermen. I love them, actually. You know what I mean? I eat the catfish I mostly catch because I catch so many, but we go to restaurants and eat catfish. I got nothing against commercial fishermen. I've reached out to the commercial fishermen and had conversations with them. One of them specifically in this capital, trying to come up with a solution to the problem. Just can't hardly come up with a solution to fix this major problem we have out there in South Pass and North Pass. And so this bill would solve the problem. And I want to say this before I get up. I'm not trying to do anything that ain't being done across the state of Louisiana in other areas. This bill is local to Tangipahoa Parish area. I'm not trying to do anything that ain't being done across the state of Louisiana. Just for reference, Tuffuncta River, RS 56405, seines, nets, webbing, and traps of any kind are are prohibited in Tchefunctor River all the way to the lakeshore of Pontchartrain. I found this one ironic. I always, was told that Lake des Allemands was the catfish capital of the world. I think you've probably heard that yourself. Says here, RS 56405, Lake des Allemands, Bayou des Allemands, Lake Salvador, seines, nets, webbing, and traps prohibited. There's more to the list that are prohibited across the state of Louisiana, to the best of my knowledge.
We have some questions. Do you want to take them before your guests come up, or do you want to come back to
That's fine with me. Yes, sir,
You want
absolutely.
to take them now?
Yeah.
Okay. Representative Zarang for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Mack, so I'm trying to look at the map here. So it's from 55 to Lake Pontchartrain is essentially what you're saying, no hoop nets? Is that?
That's 100% correct.
Okay. So obviously, when you see that is a problem. And I do agree that catfish definitely are more resilient than those other species you referenced. But my question is, if the fishermen are allowing that to happen, they're obviously either bad fishermen or they just have a complete disregard for what they're trying to do. And I'm just wondering, was this over a series of days?
Great
Because
question.
obviously their purpose is to catch as many fish as possible and not have fish floating. So I'm just wondering, when you talk to the commercial fishermen, did they offer any potential solution or alternative? Like labeling maybe the nets, or just trying to find an identification that the bad apples can be identified and address that?
That's a good question. Let me try to answer that. And number one, the dead fish problem is throughout the summer months. It's not just maybe a week here or a week there. It's just about every time I go down there and go fishing, they're floating by my boat while I'm anchored and things like that, But it's all summer long. The second question, I think, was have I asked them.
You mentioned you talked to them. There was no possible alternative?
Well, let me say this. This is the truth. So we talked about maybe having larger hoop nets, or maybe larger in diameter, or maybe longer hoop nets that might, have less chance for catfish to die in that type of net. Possible. We talked about, taking the dead catfish out of the net, put it in your boat, and then disposing it in a proper place. That would solve the problem.
Right.
That truly would solve the problem that we have. The problem with that is that, how many people are going to actually take an entire net of dead catfish, put it in the boat, and dispose of it properly? The easiest thing to do is just dump it right back in the bayou, to the point to where some of them have told me that others are doing it at night now so that nobody can even see them dumping the dead catfish. I want to also say that camp owners, from what I've been told, have witnessed them pull up the nets, see a net full of dead fish, and then it's too heavy to put the whole entire hoop net in the boat, so they take a net and they dip the dead fish, out of the hoop net and just dump it in the bayou. And sometimes it might take an hour to dump all those dead catfish. You know what I mean? That's what I haven't witnessed that myself, but that's what a camp owners are communicating to me that they have witnessed. I talked to some others this morning on the way here, trying to come up with a compromise or a solution. They may come to the table and try to offer some type of solution that we all could live with. I'm willing to try anything. I just don't know if there's actually a solution other than doing what we're trying to do.
And I understand and appreciate. Now, I read a lot of Candle and Curse Your Darkness, so I would offer, what about, predominantly the water quality issues are probably more prevalent during the warmer months, or I know they would
Yes,
be.
sir. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
also when most of the camp owners are probably there as well.
That's what they're saying.
So maybe if you can limit it from, no hoop nets from May through September or something as an alternative, but that's something hopefully y'all can maybe work out.
That sounds like a really good, solution. I'd be willing to do that. I've actually mentioned that to Wildlife and Fisheries, to see if maybe that would be a possibility. And I want to say this real quick. I talked to one of the commercial fishermen down there, and, I care about people. I don't want to put anybody out of business. I asked him straight up, eyeball to eyeball. I'm like, look, man. I said, you seem like a good fella. I said, I don't want to put you out of business. I said, but this is a major problem. I said, if we pass this law, will it put you out of business? Will you be able to, financially survive and operate and be able to catch catfish in other places, like maybe Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Marpaw? And he said, yes. It's not going to put me out of business. It may put some of the smaller guys out of business, that do this part-time, but me, I do this full-time, and not going to put me out of business.
I understand.
Representative Mack and Representative Zarang, you want to draft an
I'm
amendment,
done.
or you just want to offer the thought of doing that
Yeah,
amendment?
just consider that. I just wanted
Okay,
to.
maybe we come back to that after we hear some more debate, and
Okay, sir.
maybe Rep. Zarang could offer that amendment if that seems to work for today. Thank you, Representative Zarang. Vice Chair Orgeron for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rep. Mack, the legislation just talks about 2 gear types, or is that 1 gear type? Hoop nets, seines.
That's two,
And
to the best of my knowledge.
what we were seeing was hoop nets that were filled with the.
That's true.
And whenever we're talking about seines, we're talking about not purse seines like they use in the menhaden industry or anything like that, right?
No.
It's just straight nets to catch them. What's more? I mean, are the hoop nets really the most common one that you're?
Hoop nets are the problem. Hoop nets are the problem. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And the other types that commercial fishermen use, I mean, I would be using rod and reel and hook and line, but there's jug lines. I've actually been in that area and seen people coming out in the water with like spearfishing and coming up with a big cat on the end of a bolt of a spearfish. So I know that you wouldn't have a problem with that probably gear type, because that would be one take and
Trout lines, diving for fish, none of that is a problem. It's just
Gotcha.
the massive amount of catfish that are dying in the hoop.
And the pictures at first, I saw all the dead ones, and I wrote down, is that because of the size that they were discarded, or just whenever they find
They're
the
dead.
hoop nets, if they find a hoop net full of dead catfish, that's and the way that that occurs is what, like over catching, and they get in there and they basically
It's kind of like
asphyxiate.
I don't really know exactly what's causing the problem. I talked to some of the commercial fishermen. They said that sometimes it happens. It just happens.
Okay.
And it's maybe a body of water with low oxygen flows over the top of the net for a certain period of time, and it causes them to die. Also, sometimes if you're doing this part-time and I want to say this, depending on the time of the year, you may run your net 7 days, once every 7 days. You may run it every other day. You may run it twice a day. It just depends on how quickly they're filling up, right? And you just got to really stay on top of your business in order to make sure that you don't have dead catfish in your hoop net. Well, my thought is if you're doing this part-time, you're working, your schedule changes, there's all kind of different things that happen in life. You might not be able to run it as often as you would hope to, and, things happen and you pull up a net and it's got dead catfish in it.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry.
No, I wanted back. I know that Rep. Zarang had touched upon every crab trap is supposed to be recreational or commercial, supposed to have a tag on it with some sort of trackability or your ID number. You don't know if that's the case with these hoop nets.
I don't know the answer to that. No, sir.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask for Wildlife and Fisheries later after, I think, proponents first, opposition second, and then for information third, correct?
Come up now and answer that question, or you want to go?
We don't have to go out of order. I mean, we can.
Good, let's do this. Is Patrick available? Patrick Banks?
It's right outside the door right there.
Cole, can someone come and answer that question for us?
Put Cole in the hot seat.
I think Cole's going to be in the hot seat in a little bit.
That's just brutal.
Yeah.
Patrick, we're talking about hoop nets, and the first question is whether or not in Manchac they need any tags like a crab trap, an identifier, and identify yourself, sir. Oh, you were.
I'm sorry, I'm Patrick Banks. I'm the Fisheries Management Division Administrator for Wildlife and Fisheries. And so can you please repeat the question? I apologize.
Hoop nets in Manchac area. dead catfish is what he's writing legislation for to kind of prohibit them. And both Representative Zarang and I asked whether or not any identification tag is required on that type of gear type in Louisiana waters.
It is, Representative. We passed some commission rules last year, maybe the year before, to require not just that gear, but all the passive gear to have some identification markers on them.
I gotcha. Any knowledge on enforcements and citations, warnings written for anything like that that you could comment on?
Unfortunately, I do not have that information, but we can certainly
Understood.
compile it for you.
Look, every day that we're here in session, a little bit of our liberty gets eroded with each new law that we write and not striking one off the book. I'd rather not have to pass a good, maybe Representative Mack bill if proper enforcement of this issue could resolve the problem at hand that he's having. So I appreciate it. So they are supposed to have them on these hoop nets.
That's correct.
Lastly, I had mentioned right before you walked in that in that area I had seen people using spear guns to basically take catfish. That's permitted?
It is.
Okay, just making sure I wasn't ratting on anybody. That's all the questions I have right now.
Mr. Chairman, if I could
I'm
just
sorry, I meant-
expound on the enforcement of it. Cole Garrett, General Counsel, Wildlife and Fisheries. I don't have specific numbers on enforcement actions that have been taken within the area, but I will tell you we do have a penalty on the book in 56409.1. That's the wasting of the state's commercial resources. And so to the extent we found somebody willfully discarding catfish, we can go investigate that. We do have a penalty provision for that, and I've shared that with Rep. Mack as well. And I'll say it on the record, if anybody experiences this occurring, somebody's dumping their fish, please contact us. We'd like to conduct that investigation. So just wanted to add that as far as the penalties.
Thank you. Representative Coates for a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Mack. So let me ask this to Wildlife and Fisheries while y'all are at the table. So previously, there was a law on the books where past Manchac south, there was no hoop nets, correct? And then that law was repealed?
I'm sorry, Rep. Coates, I don't recall that. I'd have to research that within the history of the law.
Okay, I'll find that statute and get back to you. But the other question is, so RS 56-329 also says that you can't obstruct waterways with nets and stuff. So can you kind of expound on that? Because, we're having camp owners that are running over nets, getting in props. We're having camp owners having nets attached to their personal docks. And then, other people are fishing and recreational fishing, and they're running into nets.
So, Rep. Coates, I believe the purpose of that particular provision is to make sure that you don't have an inlet or where waterways connect with one another, where it's totally blocked, impeding navigation, or from the resource standpoint, impeding fish from coming and going. So my appreciation is that you wouldn't be able to string a net entirely across where two bodies of water, where a confluence of water meets.
That's correct. Generally, the reason that was there, it is partly for navigation, but mainly to protect the resource so that somebody couldn't string a net and catch every single thing that's making its way through that pass.
Okay. So enforcement was brought up a few minutes ago. So between myself, Representative Mack, and Senator Wheat, we've been asking for 3 years for enforcement, and we never knew about the wasting law. That was never brought to our attention for 3 years until just now. So when did that come on the books?
That's been on the books for quite some time, and I know I shared it with Rep. Mack via phone call. If I didn't share it with you, my apologies.
Okay. So if someone is putting a net on someone's personal dock without permission, is that trespassing? Is that something that you guys enforce?
We do enforce trespass as it relates to game violations, so something that we could investigate. Presumably attaching something to someone's immovable property without permission would, potentially be a trespass that we would investigate, or the sheriff or whomever.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Representative Coates. Representative Kerner for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Mack, I just want to say that I want everybody to know it here, because there's a lot of commercial fishermen and everything, that, and I saw you get mighty emotional when you was talking about them. I will tell you that every commercial bill I brought in here, you backed 1,000% to help the commercial fishermen. And I thank you for that. And I'll tell you, I'll just go on and say that fishermen make their living with live fish. I was a commercial fisherman for 5 years, but in every business there's some bad actors, and you can't be much of a fisherman if you let those nets sit for that long and have dead fish in it. So what I think we got probably, and I'm just saying because I was in that business, you probably got good fishermen in there that's actually right now in a position where they could suffer for the bad, because you got people leaving their nets unattended and coming there with dead fish in it. I don't know if a time limit on how long you could have your nets without checking them would be an answer, but it's definitely a situation where you have a couple bad actors not doing what's right, and everybody shouldn't suffer for them.
I think you're spot on, Rep. Kerner. I think you're spot on. And just before I forget, I wanted to address the enforcement thing. I think Wildlife and Fisheries does a great job. I think their budget's limited. I think if we could increase their budget maybe 3 or 4-fold, that they would have plenty enough deputies and agents down there to be able to enforce the law. But what I want to say also is that we've been begging for help for 3 or 4 years. With the limited amount of enforcement agents down there, it ain't doing no good to have the laws on the books, because the problem's only getting worse.
Thank you, Representative Kerner. Question, Representative Lacombe.
Joe kind of touched on some of the questions I had, but I guess, and Tim said it too. Good commercial fishermen are going to be running these nets pretty frequently. So, that's their livelihood. They're trying to get in and out, get the fish. I guess my take, though, and we see the picture that Representative Mack put up with the whole entire hoop net full of dead fish. And we're talking about the summer months. So my question, I guess, from the biology side of it is, is in the summer months, you think it may be something to do with, and I guess one thing, we saw the hoop nets, so all the fish was dead in it. And then we saw all the other fish. I live on a lake in Point Cavite Parish, and I see dead catfish during the summer months too. Is it because of temperature changes or variation in temperature changes? Maybe some of those fish were not necessarily came out of a hoop net, but just or dying because of changes in water temperature, quality, clarity, we don't know. Look, we know for sure we saw the fish. They're dead. And we saw a hoop net full of fish, so we know that at least it's happening. And I certainly know Representative Mack. He's not going to come in here and tell us something that's not happening. So I just want to see if there's more pieces to this puzzle than just, maybe fishermen and hoop nets and maybe something else. What's the take there? I don't know
Well, and unfortunately, I was outside, so I didn't have the ability to hear the date of those pictures. But we investigated a very large fish kill in this area and determined that there was a lot of low dissolved oxygen issues going on in that area, both in the pass and in the lake and in the flooded swamps around the lake. So we felt like that the issue that was going on at that time was a problem with low dissolved oxygen. And so that can occur, as you very correctly said, during those hot summer months. And so it is a temperature issue with the water. The hotter the water, the less dissolved oxygen it's able to hold. And so you tend to see those kinds of issues during those warmer months when the water temperature starts to warm up.
Is there anything there in that area, because I don't know the area at all, is there anything in that area, like variations in water, depth, like we have drawdowns on our lake, we have certain things, or there's something in that area that maybe affects it or not? I don't know, Representative Mack. I guess that I'm trying to figure out all potential sources of what this could be, because I think that, commercial fisherman who's doing this full time, he's trying to get in and out every day. But I mean, you can't throw, you see the picture of the hoop net full of dead fish, something caused it. I also know that there are people on our lake that kind of throw the nets in, and then they're more weekend warrior types that, they're not commercial fishing every day, but they throw these nets in, and I see it happening too. So I'm just trying to figure out if this is a commercial fishing issue or if this is other people who are just doing it on the side or not. Are there any limitations on this? Because in the past, I know commercial fishermen, they get the commercial license through Wildlife and Fisheries. It's a particular type of license you have to have. So you should have, literally everybody who's doing this for a living should have a commercial license of it, some sorts, correct, Cole?
That's correct if you're doing it for a living, but you are also correct that there's recreational activity that's allowed for these gear types. And so a recreational angler or recreational fisherman licensed could do a limited number of this type of gear as well. So
what is that if for a recreational license versus a commercial license? If you're recreationally doing it, what's the
you're not selling your catch. If you wanted to go catch catfish to feed your family, you could utilize gear types other than rod and reel. We used to have individual gear, recreational gear types in 2021 when we expanded all the privileges of our recreational license. We folded those in, and just you get to participate in the fishery through any legal means now.
And so if you have a recreational license to do it, what's that covered under, like big game, small game, just regular fishing license?
Just the basic fishing license for
fishing
freshwater.
license.
Yes, sir.
And on these gear types, because I'm going to refer back to, like we talking about the crab traps, on these particular gear types, if you're just doing it recreationally, do you have to tag the same way as the commercial fishermen on your?
Yes, sir, and that's under commission rule that we've required a tag, all passive gear to be tagged, and then Rep. Kerner had asked about a time limit. There's also a 24-hour rebating requirement under that same rule.
I know enforcement of that would be quite difficult. It's almost like a gentleman's agreement. If you're going to be doing it, there's a 24-hour period, but it's hard for y'all to enforce that type of thing. But I think that there's certainly, if this goes on, we have to have some type of a higher enforcement level than just the gear type tags. I mean, look, the crab trap people have been doing it for now. It's well widespread through educational purposes. They know you get caught with a crab trap and it's not tagged properly. They know the ramifications. I think Rep. Mack, the same for your area. If this proceeds in some kind of capacity, the folks there are going to, and that also was ultimately on the fishermen. They're going to need to know that they have to spread the word through the organizations or whatever they have, is that you better have a tag on this net, because if you don't, then there may be some ramifications. But it just has to. You can't just have nets sitting there a hoop net full of dead fish and nobody know who it's for, and then some guy shows up in the middle of the night, dumps it out, and rolls out. Is there anything that I may be missing here in regards to sort of when this is happening? Kind of during the summer months, is there anything else other that could be an alternative to this, other than maybe water clarity, temperature, or just sort of recreational people?
I mean, I guess there could be a potential pollution issue in the area, but we did not document something like that. Any kind of fish kill that's reported, when we go out and investigate that, we also provide that information to LDEQ, and they perform their own type of investigation from a pollution standpoint, and we have not been notified by them that there was any kind of a pollution issue. And again, showing that the DOs were where the DO level, the dissolved oxygen level, was where it was, and the fact that we had this widespread issue going on. And again, I don't know where all of these pictures were taken or what time frame they were taken, but at least the incident that we investigated was pretty widespread in that basin.
Okay. We've been.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to say this. We hoped that it would be a one-off. Maybe a storm comes through and, disturbance of the settlement and everything, and lowers the oxygen content and kills the fish, and this problem would go away. But we've been observing this the entire summer for 3 or 4 summers, and it keeps getting worse. So just through observation, we feel like we've narrowed it down to what the real problem is, and that's the dead fish appearing in the hoop nets being dumped in the pass. And I'm going to say this too, when going back to the species, when you're out there fishing in South Pass, they got bass and perch and everything along the side. It's all freshwater, I guess brackish maybe, but you're not seeing bass, you're not seeing perch. Whenever you have a fish kill like in Emmett River or something, you see multiple species of fish. This is just catfish.
Okay. This is obviously a situation that these guys have been on for a while now, and I know we're probably going to hear from a lot of commercial fishermen and people coming in, and I could tell that Representative Mack, Representative Coates, that area, they need some help. They need some solutions here to something. And I know Representative Mack. He told me privately he does not want to put people out of business and stuff, but they are going to need some assistance with this. If anything that they're talking about amending the bill, moving it forward, I think for sure it needs to be some type of a stringent tagging system on the nets. Even if increased penalties if you catch people without tagging on the nets, something to that's where I'm going with this, because look, we're getting a lot from, I know that Representative Mack says this may be on their area, but we're hearing from the Restaurant Association, we're hearing from commercial fishing operations. Some of these fish who are doing things through hoop nets or catching other species other than catfish. So we're hearing from crawfish people and all kind of folks who are just sort of worried about the impact that this complete ban may have. So whatever that is, I certainly think that they've been asking for a long time. We need to try to get some assistance here.
Rep. Lacombe, I'll echo your thoughts. Both Rep. Coates and Rep. Mack have come to us talking about the number of catfish being taken out, the live ones, talking about dead ones that are floating around camps. This has been an ongoing conversation for at least 2 years now, if not more. Regarding the type of fish you're seeing floating dead, that's a reflection of the assemblage of the fish. Just catfish are extremely abundant in this waterway, and they dominate the assemblage. So I wouldn't necessarily jump to a conclusion because you see catfish and only catfish that's a result of a spilled net. It could be a result of a natural occurrence where the fish that are there are affected and they happen to be catfish. I think that was kind of the results of our 2025 study, as well as southeastern Louisiana did some pretty in-depth work within the area, and that's what they're identifying is this. There's a lot of catfish. So,
all right, let's try to move this along a little bit. Rep. Sawyer for a question. Thank you, Representative Lacombe. Rep. Sawyer for a question.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I'll be brief. Representative Mack, so anyone growing up in the city of Baton Rouge remembers the annual fish kills at the LSU lakes in August because of low oxygen. I mean, everybody in the metro area knows that every August fish will die. So that's something that we've known for decades, my lifetime and previously people before that. So I trust the observations of people who experience it. So would you say that this is a recent problem or a historic problem? It seems to me if it's historic, then that probably lends itself to the notion that this is more oxygen related. If it's more recent, and recent can be 5, 10, 15 years, it would suggest that something else is going on. And so, I believe you've got constituents here who are firsthand observers of what's going on. As I said, I tend to rely and have faith in the people who have firsthand observations. How would you characterize that?
My personal observation is that, I used to be a saltwater fisherman for about 20 years, and then around 2018, due to the hurricanes and the cost and my father-in-law and mother-in-law getting elderly, we decided to start fishing a lot in South Pass, and we became catfishermen. And like I say, we go down there about a couple times a month, and we catch anywhere from 25 to 60 catfish. I mean, it's a lot of fun, you know, but what I want to say is we started really noticing it about 4 years ago, and it's become worse and worse. And I want to go back to, you know, it's multiple fishing trips over an entire summer. It's not here and there once or twice a summer. It's all summer long. Yeah, thank you. Hopefully I answered that.
Are you through, Representative Sawyer? Okay. Next question, Representative Bryant.
We all come to represent our locals, right? And this is a local issue for you guys. What changes the narrative for him wanting to prohibit this prohibition on his waterways versus the other waterways he cited where other reps brought it and said it's a problem?
I'd say nothing.
Okay, so it's just something that needs to change in his area. What is the long-term effects of us not doing anything today?
You could potentially have, catfish are very abundant in the waterway, and if they're not being removed from commercial fishing activity, then you potentially have more naturally occurring fish kills because of the abundance of the fish. If you do have a low dissolved oxygen, you could have a stunted growth for the fish if they're too many within a waterway and they're competing for resources. So
this is the opposite effect. If we go with this bill, now it triggers a surplus of catfish?
Potentially.
Because now it takes the netting out of the game, and that is unattractive to a commercial fisherman. He's going to just move down the road where he can?
Well, my appreciation is he wouldn't be allowed to fish there, so he would
have to move down the road.
Move, yes.
And now you have how are you going to combat, Rep, how are you going to combat a million catfish now messing with?
Great question.
Okay.
The thought is I've seen lots of hoop netters fish in Lake Marpaw and Lake Pontchartrain. It's right there. I mean, you can just move your nets just, a couple of miles. You can still launch at the same boat launch.
No.
The same area, but you can still just
He's not saying that. He's saying they're going to move down the road.
The fish
they'll be
or the
prohibited.
fishermen?
But how are you going to combat the fish?
Oh, great question.
The fish ain't going to move down. Are the fish going to move down the road too and go find a net? Wait.
Well, and I will say this: the fish.
What are we doing right here? Wait.
I will say this on a serious note: the fish, different times of the year, they migrate. I guess you could use the word migrate. They fluctuate. They go to the rivers, they go to the lakes, they float back and forth through South Pass. It's not like that. The volume of fish are constantly, in South Pass. I mean, they're everywhere in the basin. I think the study that Mr. Coles referred to, the Southeastern RAN, is data from the entire basin. It's not specific to South Pass, to the best of my knowledge. And it's not like you can't take your net somewhere else and catfish. As a matter of fact, one of the gentlemen that I talked to that's a commercial fisherman, one of the biggest players in the game, he had hoop nets on the south shore of Lake Pontchartrain and was catching many fish at a different time of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go to other places and catch the same fish. The same fish that are in South Pass can be removed in other parts like Lake Marpaw and Lake Pontchartrain.
Sounds like you're saying they're the same fish, they'll just get in front of them and catch them in a different area?
Yes, sir. I
had a friend, and he's dear to me, but for my first term, he sunsetted everything. He was the Sunset King, two doors down from me right now, but those are to see if something would work and then naturally go away by itself. Unless you could come in and show that it's not a nuisance or not a problem, you may want to consider doing this for 2 years or 4 years. I don't know what the space would be before it would become a nuisance. Is that immediate if they can't? Or is that something that would probably take
We
2 to
have some
4
good,
years.
that's a good suggestion, along with Representative Zarang talking about certain times of the year as well.
Right,
I think
so-
both of y'all are on to something that
If
may
you-
work.
You should entertain that, right?
what-
An
I thought
amendment
about that.
says-
Good
would you be
mind,
okay
I
with
thought
that?
about that. Yeah, absolutely.
Rep Mac, let's, if y'all don't mind, let's, and Rep Coates, I know you're in queue, but can we bring up the people who wanted to speak on this real quick?
Morning season.
If y'all would yield the table?
What season?
And then let's see if we come to some consensus, and if we don't, maybe we can voluntarily defer this and work on it another week. Because we go to the floor at 1, and the Joe Ogeron show is coming up, and it's going to take a while, and
Why are you not sunsetting anymore?
we'd like to call up Tom
What is that about?
Inman, Tom,
Gave up on the
Vigil Allen,
Joe?
and Osmond Crane.
Want to keep me on the mic?
If y'all could come up to the table.
Talking to the people.
I'd like to implement the 3-minute rule for presentations, please. Madam
Sunset
Secretary,
King.
if you could work the clock when the folks are speaking. Are they in the hall, maybe?
But is
Sergeant?
there any way to get it documented I'm the new Sunset King? No.
I'm turning your mic off now, Rep Bryant, thank you. All right, that's the 3, okay. All right, so gentlemen, welcome. On the front of the table is a light green, yellow, and red. We're going to give 3 minutes for each of you if you need it. You don't have to use it all if you don't need it, but you'll see the yellow light come on. That's going to let you know you have 30 seconds left. If y'all could keep your presentations within that 3-minute window for us, and then the committee could ask you questions after. So if you would just introduce yourself for the record, and then you can start. And thank you for being here.
Am I live? First, my name is Tom Inman. I live in Ponchatoula, Louisiana, and I have a camp on South Pass. Matter of fact, it's the last camp before the lake. Been there about 6 years. I grew up on the Tangier River, but we decided to move over to the big water, and it was a little better fishing over there. There are probably 125 camps on North Pass and South Pass. My camp is one of the newer ones. Most of those camps are second, third, fourth generations. It is a fabulous community to be a part of. Everyone fishes, everyone crabs. And it was nice. I've got 14 grandkids. We spent a lot of time there. And 5 years ago, they could go out and catch, half a dozen catfish in an hour. And that's all I wanted to clean, because we're going to eat them tonight. Now they may go fish all day and catch one. It's just not the way it's, supposed to be. Then we noticed the hoop netters showed up. And it's amazing the fish they can take out. I've watched them. They have nets. They're not marked. They GPS them, and then they got to go where they're marked and pick them up and get them out. The hoop nets are 6, 8, 10 feet long. Starts with a big hoop, works its way down to a little bitty funnel. Fish are dying because too many fish get in there, and they run out of oxygen. That's a fact. And you catch a slack tide, then they're going to die faster because the water's not moving. I've watched them dip a net for one net for an hour and a half, 2 hours. They are pulling thousands of pounds of fish out. There's nothing, Google hoop nets, Louisiana. The biggest guy in the pass has 13 nets. He's on YouTube saying it's nothing to pull 8,000 pounds a day out. I think you mentioned that the ban at Lake des Allemands I think if you research, they banned it because they almost fished the damn thing out. There's no limit. Residential license, you can catch 25 catfish per day. They have to be at least, channel is 12 inches, blue is 13 inches. These people take everything. This is a hole in the net. It's 1.25 inches. Anything bigger stays in the net, and they take it out. This has got to stop.
Hold that thought. We'll come to you with questions if we have any. Go ahead, sir. And you can begin. Introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning. My name's Osmond Crane. I'm a resident of Ponchatoula. I also own property in Man Shack. I've owned that property for about 12, 15 years, and grew up in Man Shack, fishing in the waters ever since I can remember. We've never had fish kills like we've seen in the past few summers. We see fish kills during hurricanes or shortly thereafter because of oxygen depleted water coming through there. But those are all scale fish. These are only catfish, only in the summertime, and there's literally thousands floating above the water. Not to mention the smell and everything else you have to put up with. Just recently, last week, I'm also a commercial fisherman. I run trot lines. I have 2 trot lines that I run. And I have a 16-foot skiff that I run those trot lines in. Last week, I left my camp and was headed back home. And before I got to the bridge, my boat stopped immediately. Motor come out of my hands, almost threw me overboard. I stopped and collected my thoughts, and I picked the motor up and looked, and I sent Mr. Representative Kim a picture of what had happened. I assumed that was a rope tied to a hoop net. Once I pulled it up, put it in my boat, on the way back to the landing, I ran across a hoop netter that said, "Hey, that's a hoop net rope. I know whose that belongs to." I said, "Really?" I said, "Somebody's going to get hurt." And in a month or so, we're going to have a Tickfall 200 come through there. There's boats that come through there. They're flying 100 miles an hour. Can you imagine hitting that rope, doing 100 miles an hour, and yanking all those people out of that boat and throwing them in the water? Or a pontoon boat full of kids hitting something like that, stopping the boat, throwing them out, or just getting hurt inside the boat. These are the kind of things that we don't need in our area. There's also regulations in other parts of the state. There's Bayou Black and Cypress Lake in Louisiana. They have banned hoop nets. And I don't see why we couldn't do the same thing here in North Pass, South Pass, and Lake Marpaw.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir. Identify yourself for the record. Thank you.
Virgil Allen. I want to thank this committee for allowing us to come to speak to you about our concerns about our environment. I'm a retired school superintendent from Tangipahoa Parish, school teacher for 40 years, born and raised in Man Shack. My great-great-grandparents came from Liverpool, England, to be the lighthouse keepers at Lake Man Shack on Lake Pontchartrain. And we have lived there all of our lives, fighting every possible way, whether it be oil companies, shell dredges. Even when Chicago and St. Louis burned down, they came to Man Shack and cut down every cypress tree and put them on the Illinois Central Railroad and sent them up there. There's been destruction of our area forever. And I want to thank Representative Mack and Representative Coates for understanding and seeing the dangers of what is happening with these hoop nets. And what I don't understand is that hoop nets were against the law not very many years ago. So I guess the Wildlife and Fisheries went to sleep, and we took a break with the legislature, and somebody passed a bill while y'all were not here. So the less fortunate people in my community who don't have boats and motors, who don't have camps down the river, they stand on the bank with a cane pole trying to fish to catch a catfish. And I have a place across from Middendorf's, 5 acres of land on Lake Marpaw, and I let them come over there on my landing for no cost, because they have a cane and they're poor citizens trying to catch a catfish. Please, ladies and gentlemen, hear our plea and help us preserve the Manchac area, the Lake Pontchartrain area, the Lake Marpaw area. When I was a school superintendent, I required every 8th grade social studies teachers to teach a unit on environment preservation and on protecting our wildlife. I don't even see a rabbit. I don't even see a deer. I don't even see a frog, anything else anymore in Manchac, because everybody has killed them all off. We're losing our environment, ladies and gentlemen, and we have to start somewhere, and I tried to do my best, starting with our children, educating them to why it's important to keep our environment what it is and the safety of our wildlife. So today, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we get Raymond Kramer up? Is Raymond still here? If one of y'all could yield for one seat for us, please. Rep Coates, can you hold your questions for us? I got you in queue, but can you hold it? Okay. Go ahead, sir.
At last, okay. My name is Raymond Kramer. I live in Hammond, Louisiana. I have a very long history on Pass Manchac. My grandparents, parents, brothers, we've been there for over 50 years. Until recently, I've never seen the fish kills that we've had. These fish kills are not a few fish floating on the surface. These fish kills, if it happened for any other reason, they would be on the news broadcast in Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and probably nationwide. These nets will hold more than 1,000 pounds of catfish each. If you have one man with 13 nets and you have 3 fishermen, all I know of is 3 commercial fishermen fishing hoop nets in Pass Manchac now. This little 6-mile stretch of Pass Manchac. You're only talking 6 miles here, people, please. But those nets that we have there from those 3 fishermen, it only takes them like 120 days to catch 1 million pounds of fish. Now, life happens. These people are not going to be able to get to their nets every day, even though they want to. These people don't want to throw away dead fish. They'd much rather have live fish to sell. But life happens. You're not going to be able to do it every day, and you're going to have fish kills. Please help us stop this on this one little stretch so we can be maybe like St. Tammany. But thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Rep Coates, is your question for them? We do have some amendments being drafted. If you want to hold your questions, or do you need to do one of these?
Table.
I'm sorry, your mic's on now.
Okay, can I have Mr. Tom come back to the table? So, Mr. Tom, we've had many conversations, and you would say that's been over the past 3 years, correct?
For sure.
And many of those pictures that were on the board were from you and and maybe also Mr. Osmond. And that was not just one incident, there were multiple incidents, correct?
Yes. Most all of those were taken last summer.
Okay. Some of them were also from some crabbers from actually 3 years ago as well, that Representative Mack and I both have gotten. And when you go out to your camp on the weekends and you talked about your grandkids, but when y'all get there, you can't even enjoy it. Is that correct? I mean,
no, first you got to clean up. I mean, I had 2 grandkids with me, and I told them we have a little boat, 4 little boat slips off the pass, and they were floating all in it. and I said, I tell you what, I'm gonna give you all $1 for every fish you dip out of here and get it out of the boat slip areas. I paid them $52. I mean, I'm not talking little catfish. We're talking 6, 5, 6, 7, 10-pound catfish that are dying. It's not fun. That's not why we built it. That's not why we go there. It's just, we got a problem.
And you're on the east side towards Lake Pontchartrain, correct?
Yeah.
And Mr. Osmond, you're on the west side towards Lake Maurepas by I-55.
Correct.
And so, and you can concur that Mr. Inman is saying the same thing, that it's just hundreds and thousands of fish that.
It literally is. To see it for yourself is appalling.
And how many years have you had your camp on South Bass?
I've had it there for 15 years.
And have you seen the fish kills like in the last 3 years?
Not like what we see now. Like I said before, it was during a hurricane, after a hurricane, when oxygen was depleted in the water, but it was only scale fish, never catfish.
So typically when the black water comes out off the management area, out of the swamp, and it comes in and it depletes that oxygen. Because a lot had questions about the environment and how the water has changed. And that's what I see, a lot, is you can kind of sit there and you can see the water change. Yeah. And when that black water comes, and there's no oxygen in that water.
But it doesn't kill catfish, only the hoop nets.
But if the catfish are in the hoop nets when the black water comes.
Every one of them.
Every one of them dies.
Yes.
And Mr. Allen, you mentioned, a previous law. So from what I've found was there was a state statute 56-322, and what it did was it had some restrictions on nets and different gear, and it started from past Manchac and went south. So Manchac did have that prohibition before, and they basically kind of got rid of that geographic location, and when that paragraph was deleted, that's when they allowed them to come back to the pass. And then now we're getting the influx that we never had before. And I think y'all are all seeing the issues that are happening.
And Representative Coates, I don't know if you guys know where Middendorf is in Manchac, Louisiana, restaurant. But my parents, like I said, came there in 1857. We still have a home on the lake. And whenever those fish start floating over toward us, we have to leave and go back to Ponchatoula. It stinks so bad. And it's just horrible. You wouldn't want that in your backyard like we do down there. I also want to tell you this, that on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, over 100 trucks and trailers with recreational fishermen who bring their families and their little kids to Manchac to go fishing are there every weekend.
We do have one of the busiest boat launches in the entire state right there. And so I also want everyone to realize, he was talking about it's only a few miles. So if we prohibit the nets just in this pass, they still have both lakes to fish. Like the fish are still moving back and forth, so they can still move the nets off, and that's not within the pass where all the boat traffic is. So you still have both lakes that can be fished.
Ms. Kim, I want to reemphasize the fact that our less fortunate people that live in my community don't have boats and motors and camps that they can get to. They have a cane pole that they're trying to catch a fish on the bank. We need to keep them in consideration also.
Well, we have a lot of trout line guys. I mean, that's what Manchac was for decades, was trout lines. And now I'm getting complaints from the trout line guys that the hoop nets are going on top of the trout line. So, but thank you, Mr. Speaker, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Coates. Representative Zarang.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, in an effort, I know we have a busy schedule, and maybe to move this along, I was wondering if we could possibly put the amendment on that may address some of the concerns or issues, and then...
That would be great. What is your amendment, Representative Zerang?
Oh, in talking with my seatmate here, Representative Bryant, and I think we talked to the author as well, the proposal would be to limit hoop nets from May through August with a 2-year sunset to evaluate if in fact it's effective in having a difference.
Representative Zerang, Representative Mack, are you going to object to that amendment? Okay. Ms. Stoller, could you read in that amendment in concept, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rep. Zerang, do you want to do this as 2 amendments or 1?
You can do it one.
Okay. Okay, members, so this is an amendment in concept. At the end of line 9, we would add the words "from May 1st to August 31st." So it would read, "Notwithstanding any other provisional law to the contrary, the use of hoop nets and seines shall be prohibited in North Pass and Manchac Pass from Interstate 55 to Lake Pontchartrain from May 1st to August 31st." And then I would add another section to the bill to repeal this provision effective August 1st, 2028.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stoller. Rep. Kerner, question on the amendment or the bill?
I guess it's to do with the amendment.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I think we ought to at least hold the amendment until we actually hear from the other side.
Well, I think the amended form is going to help the other side. We will hear from the other side. Yeah. So if it can be repaired before they come up, they'll get to hear. All right, hold that for a second. Representative Zerang.
Yes, sir.
Any comments on your amendment?
No, I think it's a fine amendment. Happy to attach it to the bill.
Okay, Representative Zerang moves favorable on the concept amendment that Ms. Stoller read. Is there any objection to adoption of that amendment? Seeing no objection, that amendment is adopted and we're back on the bill. Representative Mack, let's see, hang on, there are no other cards in support of the bill, and there are no further questions for you gentlemen at the table, so we do appreciate you for being here. You can yield the table now. Thank you. Thank you. And there are no cards wishing to speak in opposition. There is a card in opposition from We'll Do Both with the Louisiana Restaurant Association on the original bill. I have no cards. You need to fill one out real quick? Did you turn it in?
That guy right over there. That is House Bill 6.
Come on to the table and identify yourself and we can go ahead and hear your testimony. We'll find your card.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Is there anyone else who filled out a card with you that did not? Is there anyone else besides you two? Okay. Just identify yourselves for the record, and then be sure we get a card from you before you leave.
Is my mic on, I think? Yes. Yeah, my name is Harlan Pierce. I own Harlan's Jellyfish in Kenton, Louisiana, and I've been in the seafood business for a very, very long time. And I've watched fisheries go and come. I've watched fisheries disappear that our great fishermen in this state no longer have access to. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we began to start working on a wild catfish fishery for the state of Louisiana. There is a big demand for fisheries on the East Coast and in the state of Louisiana for catfish. We've created that in the last 5 years. We're USDA inspected, so it's all really quality product. And this may look like a small issue to you guys, a small area to you guys, but it's a much bigger picture than that. We have DeSalmon, we have these other places, but by the way, DeSalmon, hoop nets are legal in DeSalmon. That's how they catch their fish. But we have to be able to keep our fishermen in the water in the area in Manchac, because basically in the summertime, blue catfish is what we catch in Manchac. The market for blue catfish is very strong in that month, July, August, September, July and August for sure. The market for that fish is on the East Coast. It maybe not be here in New Orleans for that situation, but it's on the East Coast. When they start catching crabs up there, they don't fish the catfish up there, and so the volumes of catfish begin to move in out of town. You don't catch blue catfish in Desalmon at the numbers you catch in Manchac Pass. It's a very different fishery. So that particular area to us is important, particularly in that August, July month period. But it's not just that. Here we are creating a volume, low-price, quality market for this state. We don't have a volume fishery in this state inshore anymore, none. We have no redfish, we have no trout. We have hardly any, no summer mullet. So we're finally finding a way to create a fishery where we can grow fishermen, where we can have volume, and it takes volume to get it done. And I think most of you guys have this report from Mr. Hyman Wildlife. There's so many of these fish down there to be caught. They need us to catch them to start with. But it's just not that. If we continue pushing backwards, and I know this is a little issue to you guys, but it's a big issue to us. If we continue to limit our fisheries in the state of Louisiana, we continue going the other way, and we're finally finding something that we can create a national marketplace for, as well as a great local marketplace. The restaurants, the retailers in the state and the city love the catfish. They do love the catfish, and it's becoming better and better all the time. But we're finally having a footprint across this nation that Louisiana is a catfish state. And this particular area, that particular time of year, is a very important part of our life right now, because that's the fish that the East Coast wants, the blue catfish. That's the fish that New York wants. So we can ship thousands of pounds to the East Coast without any problem at all in that particular time. And again, I've been around a long time, and I've watched fisheries go and come. And I really don't want to see this one start going the other way. And I know the people on this committee that are commercially oriented know what I'm talking about. Whether you're a shrimper or a crabber or whatever, you've seen us get kicked all the time. And this is just another way to slow us down from what we're trying to do. And it's a great fishery. And I've talked with Representative Mack. I pledged that we would be glad to work with them and try to solve these problems. I pledged that we would love to sit down with the landowners and figure out what we can do, whether it's our problem or not. Get rid of the bad apples, not a problem. We can do those things once we know what we're doing, what we have. But to kill a fishery in an area that's very strong for us, it doesn't make any sense at all. And again, we can solve the problem, or we can work to solve the problem. You've been told that we have dead water. You've been told that we have fish kills in Baton Rouge as well as there. It's not just us, but if you show me a net it's got to have a tag on it, we will work on that guy.
All right, thank you. If you'll stay there may be some questions for you. And go ahead, sir, identify yourself for the record. And yes, sir. You should be hot.
Is this working?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. How y'all doing? My name is Mr. James Anthony Hickman, and I make a living catching some catfish. I am the guy that spoke to Mr. Mack.
If you could come on up to the mic a little bit for us. Yes,
sorry about that. It's not exactly my strong suit. I'm the guy that spoke to Representative Mack. I haven't had the honor of speaking with Ms. Coates or Mr. Wheat, but for lack of another term, and this is not meant to sound arrogant, I'm the guy that you ask the stuff to about the catfish, because I have all the answers to anything that you could ask. I'm known as the catfish guy and the hoop net guy, not only in Louisiana, but in the world. So with that being said, I really hope that all of y'all have a question that you could ask me so that I can offer you the truth just how it is. I'm not going to give you only my version. I'm just going to give you the truth.
We have several questions. Do you want to take them?
Every one of them.
Okay, I just need you to pull up to that mic a little bit so you can get on the record. Thank you. Representative.
So with that being said,
I'm sorry.
Earlier we saw images on the screen here, and sometimes it's really hard to know who's responsible for that. So an image on the screen that we noticed earlier, I'm responsible for that. The image of the hoop net with the dead catfish, that's me. Now, I can explain that after whenever you ask about it. But there's a study done here. The state offers lots of evidence, and I emailed all of this to y'all inbox on yesterday, so you could look at it at your leisure. With that being said, the state says that there's in between 3 and 25 times the amount of catfish that there ever has been in the area. And there's a map of all of the fish kills of just 2024. And there's a map of all the storms that have come across Louisiana. And there's estimates and studies and everything that you can look at to say there's more catfish than ever and less people catching the catfish than ever. So that's kind of going in the wrong direction. Now, I truly do believe that Mr. Mack is not interested in hurting me. And I truly believe that there's an issue here. I know there is because I'm on the water. I make a living doing this. I don't do it haphazard. I do it for a living, and I am the best at it. Everyone that came into this industry in the last 5 years, I trained them how to do it. You can ask all of them, they're right over there. So with that being said, it was said earlier, if we just close this area of waterway, he asked one of the biggest guys in the industry, can you make a living if we close this area? And that individual said, yes, I'm that individual. I said, I can, yes, I can. However, there's a lot of other individuals that can't. It's not only about me. I'm here to argue on behalf of those individuals. You can close past Manchac tomorrow, I'll be okay. But a lot of these other guys won't. So I'm here arguing on behalf of them. It's not only about me. It's not only about past Manchac.
I got some questions for you. So,
Absolutely.
Our Representative Zarang for a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes. To the Catfish Whisperer. So I wanted to ask, and I'm Jess, but I truly respect the fact that you're out there every day and you know the water and the effects of the fish. My question to the amendment, so obviously, Harlan, I understand your concerns too. We continuously, nip at and reduce commercial opportunities that ultimately impacts fisheries. I get it. But if the amendment as proposed, there's still other opportunities to catch fish within that waterway. If the amendment were passed, would that have a significant impact on your ability to catch fish and provide fish to Harlan and those guys within that 4-month period?
It will, yes, sir, and I'll explain as to why that.
Please.
So with that being said, I live in the town of Gonzales. So everywhere that I travel in order to fish is obviously away from Gonzales. The more that I travel, the more it costs to do this. When I can fish closer to home, obviously that is advantageous to not only me, it cuts down the cost, cuts down all of these things. Now, the area that we're talking about here is in the parish of Tangipahoa. So last year, just with a little bit of research, what I noticed was that I spent about $190,000 in the parish of Tangipahoa. I bought an engine. I bought $110,000 worth of pogey in order to catch this. If I go and spend about 5 minutes asking other guys, what I'm going to locate is that all of us have spent $1 million in the town of Tangipahoa. With that being said, Tangipahoa is trying to grow. It's not trying to go backwards. I don't have a reason to go spend the money in Tangipahoa if the parish of Tangipahoa isn't going to support me. I'll go and purchase an engine elsewhere. I'll go and get something else elsewhere. With that being said, there's a tremendous economic impact on the parish of Tangipahoa. There's also a tremendous economic impact to me.
And I don't want to belabor it because we have a limited time. I understand from the economic aspect. My question was specific in terms of your ability to catch fish, and would it affect you as a commercial fisherman having that 4-month window where you can't use hoop nets? You could still use other means, but just can't use hoop nets or those 4 nets. From the harvest perspective is my question.
Yes, sir. From the harvest perspective, it is going to have a detrimental impact on me. So the reason that we fish Manchac at certain times of the year is because catching catfish at those times of the years in that location is easier than trying to move down the road. So we had spoken earlier, me and Mr. Mack, it's asked, well, can't you just go in the lake? Well, the issue is there. So Manchac is a reasonably controlled environment. It doesn't get really rough. The wind doesn't blow really hard. And we're claiming that the hoop net guys are not tending their nets on the time frame that they're supposed to. Well, if you move into a lake where the waves get approximately this big and the hoop net guys can't go out on Wednesday when it's time to run their nets, the issue could just exist in another location. And you're also have to take safety into account. A lot of the guys in this industry are much older. We're asking older men and older equipment in order to go out into a more hazardous area and do the same thing.
I understand.
I think that's a dangerous
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Representative Zarang. Question, Representative Landry. Members, it's 10:30. We go to the floor at 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
My question is how do you coexist with the residents, but I'm not understanding. You said those dead fish were in your nets.
Yes, sir.
Do you just let them float out? I guess, is that what?
No, sir. So the incident that we saw here observed, what happened there was a recreational angler's anchor got caught in the rope on the net. So it's not easy for a recreational angler to get an anchor up and a hoop net and stuff. And whenever they do that, obviously there's current and they drift. So what happened there on that net is an angler caught the net or the rope. I'm sorry. So they get it up. Everyone owns a knife. Everyone's upset that I just spent 10 minutes trying to raise up an anchor when all I wanted to do is move. They cut the rope. That net obviously drifted off. I'm able to locate almost all of the nets that are cut. I've located every one last year and every one the year before. I lost a net 3 years ago in that area. So that net was located 2,963 feet away from where I originally had it. So it took me 2 days to locate it after it came up to the top with the dead.
And I understand that. So I guess what I'm getting at is how often does these nets get in that situation, that it gets cut or it drifts off or?
Sir, but there are some ways to try and mitigate that, and we do those. We try to abide by the pest management practices that have been outlined, by the state. But in order to answer your stuff, everyone has an iPhone. Everyone here has one. Everyone behind me has one. But the images that we saw there wasn't an image of a man in a boat with a hoop net and a dip net emptying dead catfish out into the water. If any of the individuals that drove around and spotted that would go, ha, I got you now.
No, and I understand that. I guess to get to my question is, if it's an issue, I live by pogie plants. I can't make them move, but it's a smell that I've learned to live with, right? Mm-hmm. But when people invest a bunch of money into these properties, how do you prevent these fish? It's not a fish kill because I live on the water. Fish kill typically, like Rep. Mac says, kills a lot of different fish, right? My question is, how can the industry and the residents coexist together?
Well, it's actually easier than what you may expect, sir. So it takes...
Can you give me a brief answer?
Myself. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It takes a respectful individual as I am to
and you
go
look
out
that
there
way.
And respectfully harvest this here deal. We've got to avoid the camps as much as we can. We don't want to tie a line onto a camp. We want to handle our business the way that we're supposed to based upon not only the laws, but the ethical and moral issues here as well. We want to respect the camp owners. And as far as taking out any catfish that may die, we've spoken about establishing a market in order to get rid of that. I'm not going to throw away any dead catfish. It's not going to happen because I'm going to end up here not making money today, which is what is happening. So with that being said, as evidence of this, any one of you, this gentleman here mentioned a YouTube deal. I'm the guy on YouTube. I don't have a YouTube channel, but I was the guy in the thing. You can go watch it. And what you'll notice is, yes, I caught 8,000 pounds of fish that day. But what you won't notice is a dead one. So it was taken a year ago, earlier than all this started. So it's not edited in order to fit a narrative. It's just the truth. It just is what it is. If you go watch the video and locate a dead fish, I'll give you $1 million today. It's not going to happen.
No, I understand that, but there are fish being killed with the process.
Absolutely, and we know who those actors are. We've done a little bit of investigation here in the last couple of months. Whenever Mr. Mack and I had met, he gave some instances and stories that the camp owners and the residents. So me and Mr. Harlan here work really, really closely together. We believe that we've identified these actors. We believe we've identified these issues. And believe me when I say that we are firmly committed to resolving this. Because if a person does anything to affect me, then we have to have a conversation, a respectful conversation. And we have to get to the bottom of it and let the truth out there for everyone to hear.
No, I respect that. I'm from an industry where it's attacked pretty much every day. I know what it's like to try to coexist in the world today. But as Rep. Mack representing his constituents, I just think that working hard together to solve the situation is something that needs to be really addressed, right? I've heard from the other side. I think their concerns and their complaints are reasonable, right? And we do have bad actors and everything, right? I think a lot of times my industry gets hit on the chin because of the bad actors. But we're gonna have to come up with something through this bill to get something right, right? I think you keep turning a blind eye to it, then YouTube channel becomes a marked channel, or whatever your YouTube, right?
Yeah,
But
I don't do that, but I was on one.
yeah, okay. So I just think working with Rep. Mack on this bill would be something that would be beneficial to not only yourself, but being able to look these gentlemen behind you in the eye and say, hey, look, I'm doing everything I can. I'm going to be the guy policing myself, but you're going to need something with teeth in Mack's bill to get it fixed. So I appreciate you working with him.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Representative Landry.
Mr. Chairman, can I have one more comment, please?
You sure can.
One of the key things for this fishery is creating new fishermen. I got one young fisherman. Stand up. We got young
Actually,
fishermen in the audience
are you,
right
Austin?
I will let you know that.
Yeah, come on to the table. He turned a card in.
Oh, good.
So, do you want to say a few words real quick, sir?
Yes, sir.
And then we'll continue our questions. Identify yourself for the record, please.
My name is Emmanuel Austin. I'm here to say that I'm new to being a commercial fisherman, just started, but I also notice is whenever I go to Dezelman that the water is very calm, it's very safe out there. There's not that much tide out there. Whenever I go to the Pontchartrain, I don't see myself surviving out there. My boat, I'm less fortunate. I'm not like Mr. Hickman. I don't have the tools to be out in that type of water. I might drown out there, honestly. Another thing that I notice is I don't see too many game wardens at all. I haven't seen one never, honestly. Maybe if we put more resources towards them, maybe we can get the people out there to check on the hoop that is in the water. They can look at it, check, make sure everything is legal. I'm trying to do it the right way, and I just want to make sure everybody else is doing it the right way.
All right, if you want to stay there, if you want to, Representative Bryant for a question.
We are offering up an amendment in the area of his bill to do away with the nets. Are there other ways for you to operate and run and make a profit without using the nets that this bill is trying to prohibit?
Me starting just now? No, sir. I just started with the hoop nets. That's the only thing I have at the moment.
Okay. And if the 3-month period that we have in mind, are you still able to make a profit in fish in the other area he talked about down maybe a mile away?
Pontchartrain, not in Pontchartrain. I wouldn't survive out there.
The rod is too rough?
It's too rough.
And what about the period of time of this amendment? Because it's from May to August.
Like I said, I'm still new to it, so I don't have all.
You have any idea? Right. So you would have no input on whether this would mess with your bottom dollar or not this period of time. All right. Thank you for your honesty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bryant. Representative Kerner, Representative Landry, you're both in queue. I'm going to ask both of you to please be very, very quick.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Holland.
Yeah.
Just for a minute or two, just tell us why you can't live with the closure for the 4 months. Make us understand.
Real quick, is it my mic's on?
Yes.
Real quick, the fish that are necessary for us to fill the market with are in that area in those months. The Zalman's channel cat. That's not what the market demands in that summer month. It's the big, nice blue cats, and the blue cats are what are in the pass where we're catching. So, last August we caught 300,000 pounds of blue cat in that pass. All of it was sold. All of it went up north. All of it went to places that appreciated the blue cats that we have here in Louisiana. I wouldn't be able to get that in DeSalmon or anywhere else because they don't have the blue cats there at that time. So it's very important to the fishery, it's very important to the market, and it's very important to the fishermen that we maintain that fishery in that pass. And like my young fishermen tell you, like Pontchartrain gets rough at that time, it's not going to happen. They're in the pass. And so anything we do to curtail the commercial fishermen in this state just pushes one step backward again, and I don't want to see that happen.
So it's almost like saying, okay, we're gonna stop trawling from May to June.
Right.
Well, May fishing is where all the Brazilians are, and that's the only time you're gonna catch them. So that's how I understand it. Thank you.
That's correct.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, you through? Thank you, Representative Kerner. There are no further questions for you, gentlemen. Thank you so very much for your testimony. Okay. Representative Mack for closing. You can. Representative Mack.
I want to thank everybody for testifying today. I want to thank all the members for listening. I think if we move the bill forward with those amendments, it gives us the information we need. I want to also say that this is a lengthy process. You know, we vote today, we pass the bill. Nothing really changes. We got to keep working on this. I'm willing to work with all players who came to the table, you know, to do what's best for all players at the table. That being said, I'd like to make a motion we approve the bill as amended.
All right. Committee members, there is a motion by Representative Mack to move House Bill 665 as amended. Is there any objection to that motion? Seeing no objections, Representative Mack, House Bill 665 is reported favorable with your commitment to work with those gentlemen.
Absolutely.
In between here and the floor. Thank you very much. Next bill, Schermerhorn, House Bill 835.
Thank you, buddy.
Ms. Stalder, if you would read in House Bill 835, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 835 by Representative Schermerhorn establishes a charter guide wildlife management area access permit.
Representative Schermerhorn, you said this was going to be a quick and easy bill.
Oh, it is. It is.
All right, on your bill, sir.
Has nothing to do with eminent domain or carbon capture, okay?
Or hoop nets. All right. Or oysters. So, okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. House Bill 835 establishing a charter guide wildlife management in wildlife management area access permit. House Bill 835 is a straightforward, common sense bill that modernizes access to wildlife management areas for licensed charter fishing guides while protecting Louisiana's precious natural resources and supporting our hardworking small business owners. At the table with me, please introduce yourself.
Cole Garrett, General Counsel, Wildlife and Fisheries. Appreciate Rep. Schermerhorn bringing this on behalf of the agency. This is part of the department's package. We did work with the Louisiana Charter Boat Association on this. Just the brief history is because it's a commercial activity, being that somebody pays you to bring them upon waters. We have previously not allowed charter activity on WMAs. One of the main tenets of this administration is to increase recreational access and opportunity to places, and we have recently changed our regulations to allow for charter fishing on WMAs. We run into the issue with allowing that for people who don't know where they're going to be taken to go fishing, not having the proper licenses, being a WMA access permit. So what this bill does is allow a charter captain to buy a license for $100 that's going to satisfy the requirements for everybody who's upon their vessel or on the trip within a WMA or department-owned property. So that's the goal. It's not mandated that they buy that, but it's available to them for streamlining their customers' experience.
Representative Bryant for a quick question.
I think it's a great bill. This is more for the author. We used to get peach cobbler when we had to vote on really good bills last session, and we are recognizing the lack of. If we vote for this bill and move it forward, what does that do for us with the cobbler?
Well, Representative Bryant, if you notice on Mondays and Tuesdays, usually
yes,
I bring that stuff.
Yes,
But you're on the wrong committees now.
All right, I move for involuntary deferral.
There's a motion to involuntarily defer.
Hey,
We'll
you
hold
find transportation or house and government and come in any room and you will be pleasantly surprised.
All right, thank you, Representative Bryant. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to offer the bill.
Okay, all right, we'll hold that for a second.
Yes.
All right, we have lots of lights. Remind you guys that we go in at 1 o'clock and we still have a lengthy agenda. Representative Lacombe, for a quick question, please.
Cole, are they going to require captains that want to get the permit to have Coast Guard licenses too?
That would be a regulatory thing, but yes, I do believe that they're going to require that through the regulation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lacombe. Representative DeWitt for a quick question.
Thank you. My question's for wildlife. This going to conflict with the current law, this bill? Because the current law is you can't do it on wildlife management areas, right?
So the way we've interpreted the regulations was we prohibit commercial activity, and we viewed the charter captaining as a commercial activity. The way that we're looking at it now is we would not allow the captains to retain their catch, so it would just be they're acting as a water taxi to bring recreational anglers out there, and so that's kind of how we view it as not a commercial activity.
So we're going to allow out-of-staters to come in and take local people's fish?
Or people like me who don't own a vessel and live in Louisiana but would like to go out and fish.
Well, it's not many people in Louisiana who don't own a vessel, that's for sure.
I work at Wildlife and Fisheries and I don't own one.
Yeah. Because I can see it coming now in my district, on Saline, Larto Lake. Rep. Shamahorn, why are you bringing this bill?
I was asked by the department.
Yep. So this is a department asked bill?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay. That's another thing I had, because I know how Rep. Shamahorn is, and he wants to keep everything for the locals, and I'm okay with that.
Well, this allows the locals to be able to be involved. This current law, from my understanding, is that the current local cannot have a guided fishing trip on a wildlife management area. It's breaking the law. This allows them to have a guided fishing trip.
What the problem is, Rep. Johnson and I, in our area, people are blaming these guides for depleting the fishery, and that's a big issue in our area.
Yes, sir. And we've heard from your constituents. They've come to the commission meeting when we were going through the regulations that I'm talking about. They did put on testimony. The commission's response to that was to remove the guide's catch from the limit. So essentially, the recreational angler who is out there is the one who's participating, no different than somebody in their own boat going out and fishing.
Also, they have to do a report annually. I believe it's annually on the catch, on what they're actually catching and removing from the lake, if I'm correct. It is in the bill down through there somewhere.
Gotcha. I'm just thinking we're opening up a can of worms here, and I can assure that my folks back home are not going to be in favor of this bill. And what we're doing here, I can just see it happening when they start guiding on these WMAs, and you have 50 boats out there, and some guy comes out there to do a weekend trip. He's going to say all these guide boats are everywhere, and they're taking all the fish. I could see that coming, and that's what this bill is going to do, members.
All right.
So we're having that issue in our area right now.
Okay. Thank you, Representative DeWitt. Vice Chair Orgeron for a question.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to kind of follow up suit. That's where my question was. Is it a local bill? Is it only the WMA in your area?
No.
This would be every WMA in Louisiana?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm a big supporter of y'all self-generated fund activities that I'm going to cover whenever I get the moisture bill. But I'm already getting emails to ask to oppose opening it up to WMAs. I guess these constituents see WMAs as the last public access frontier without commercialization. anywhere, anything else you could tell me where WMAs and Wildlife and Fisheries allow some sort of other commercial activities. You're putting it in a veil of water taxi. I understand that.
Yes, sir. So absolutely.
But it's really a fishing guide service activity. Anywhere else that we do WMA commercial activities?
A few years ago, y'all heard a suite of bills that allows for non-consumptive, like ecotourism to occur on WMAs, and we established a very similar license to this. And again, the goal is so each individual who's going out ecotouring or fishing doesn't have to know exactly where they're going, what licenses to have. They just get to buy their 3-day guide, charter fishing license, get on a boat, and go experience Louisiana.
WMAs usually have a per person, if you go personally, a check-in, check-out.
Correct.
Usually online with an app, really easy, so that y'all can track the utilization. How would it work with this? The guide would be performing all the the accounting.
Correct.
All right. Like I said, I'm getting emails right now from constituents to oppose it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Orgeron.
Thank you.
Representative Zarang for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know we continue to reference fishing, but this wouldn't, as I appreciate it, it's pretty broad. It's not just fishing. You could have guides doing hunting. No hunting?
No, so hunting is prohibited. Hunting guide licenses or hunting guiding in general is prohibited on the WMAs. And previously, we had that extended to fishing as well. The commission recently took action to make that allowable without the guides being able to retain their catch.
Okay, so no hunting, but I would assume if you allow it on these WMAs, the rules that apply to the people, the recreational people use it in terms of engine size and all the other things, that would have to apply to the...
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Zarang. There are no further questions. There are no cards. Representative Chamberlain on closing.
This is good governance, practical, targeted, and balanced. It respects property and resource stewardship, empowers legal small businesses, and ensures our wildlife management areas remain healthy and accessible for generations of Louisiana, for those who love to hunt and fish and enjoy the outdoors. I urge you to support my bill.
All right, there's a motion by Representative Bryant to move favorable. Is there any opposition to that motion? There is an objection by Vice Chair Orgeron. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Guyman? Yes. Representative Brass? Yes. Representative Broad?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Bryant? Yes. Representative Carrier? Representative Coates? Representative DeWitt? No. Representative Demain? No. Representative Travis Johnson? No. Representative Kerner? Yes. Representative Lacombe? Yes. Representative Jacob Landry? Yes. Representative Mack? Representative McCormick? Yes. Vice Chair Orgeron? No. Representative Reiser? No. Representative Sawyer? Yes. Representative Ventrella? Yes. And Representative Zarang? No. 10 yeas, 6 nays.
You got it. 10 yeas, 6 nays, and House Bill 835 will be reported favorable.
Thank you, committee, for an easy bill.
Thank you. Just wanted to say for the record, I appreciate Representative Sawyer for bringing the only easy bill today. This is supposed to be layup day, by the way. It's supposed to be easy. All right. Let's shift to oil and gas for a minute. Let's start with Representative Landry at House Bill 637. Ms. Stalder, could you read in House Bill 637, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 637 by Representative Landry provides for oil field site restoration fees.
Thank you, Ms. Stalder. Representative Landry on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. This bill makes technical corrections to the oilfield site restoration fee rates that apply to low-producing and low-pressure oil and gas production. Current law OSR fee is proponently reduced based on the reduced severance tax rate compared to full severance tax rate issue. Full issues are as full severance tax rate for natural gas changes annually. So the OSR fee must be recalculated annually. Severance tax rate on all wells was reduced for wells completed after July 1st, 2025. This will cause misalignment to the OSR rates for all wells. The proposed law sets reduced OSR fee rates for all produced from incapable and stripper oil wells, gas produced from low-pressure oil wells, gas produced from incapable gas wells. The gas rates established in this bill align with the OSR fee rates that apply to these wells July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025. With that, I'll take any questions.
All right, there are no questions. There is a card in support by Mike Monclo with Louisiana Oil and Gas Association not wishing to speak. We do have Blake Canfield with Department of C&E here for information purposes only. We do have a question, Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would this increase fees, or I don't understand the complete?
Brett McCormick, I have somebody that can definitely answer that. I think it reduces it for these wells.
How you doing, Rep. McCormick? Dustin Davidson, Secretary, Department of Conservation and Energy. This is not designed to increase fees. What it's doing is just making it simpler for the Department of Revenue based on the changes that we made in severance to be able to calculate it. So you have some wells that have been in production before those changes to severance were made. Some are in the same field, right? And so we want to make sure that if revenue has to go through and make these calculations, that we provide them a simple, I guess, best term rubric or best way that they could do this without having to, calculate to the nearest 10th, 100th, or 1000th, or making it very complicated on them. And this is a request that they made to us, which we reviewed with them. And
we're holding up something there, Representative Landry?
Yeah, so I could share this with you. It'd be a lot to go through, but it just shows how it stays pretty much where it was before. Okay. So the technical changes are basically showing the calculation.
Okay.
So, but it just shows everything stays basically the same.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, you filling out a card?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, there are no further questions and no cards in opposition. Closing on your bill, Representative Landry.
Ask for favorable passage.
All right, Representative Landry has moved favorable on House Bill 637. Is there any objection to that motion? Seeing no objection, House Bill 637 is reported favorable. Representative McCormick, House Bill 596. Ms. Stalder, could you read in House Bill 596, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 596 by Rep. McCormick establishes an inactive well fee assessment credit.
Thank you, Ms. Stalder. Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. This bill was kind of formed in a study group that we had with the oil and gas industry. We were trying to figure out different ways to fund plugging more wells in Louisiana. If you've seen the numbers, we have several orphan wells in Louisiana, and by far the cheapest way to plug that is if the individual operators plug them instead of having the state plug them. To give you kind of a situation of how prevalent some of these stripper wells that are being threatened to go orphan are, I'll just tell you this one. I have the information on one oil field, one small oil field, Kettle Pine Island. It's got 11,298 wells. Out of those, 1,000 of them are orphan, with a total of 12,301 wells. 3,762 are considered inactive, and those are the ones most likely to be to go orphan. Out of those wells, there are 7,027 wells producing at an average of 0.32 barrels of oil per day.
So I want to repeat that. These wells, of these 7,000 wells, make an average of 0.32 barrels of oil per day. Still, to these communities, it can still be a significant revenue maker. This particular field last year at the depressed oil prices, the total revenue was over $51 million in total revenue that come out of that field. They're very instrumental to these communities to try to keep these fields alive. But what I actually, the first conversation I had with a local operator, a small operator. He owed, I think it was $18,000 in assessment fees. And his question was, why can't I take this money I'm paying to the state and use it to plug these wells with they're concerned about? And thought that made good sense. I mean, a few years ago, we started having to put inactive wells on a list, and after those wells were inactive for 5 years or more, you had to start paying a fee, and that's where this fee come from. We were told at the time the reason was to discourage people from having, inactive wells 5 years old or older. So and we actually had a bill that come through here. When I first started working on this bill, we had a bill come through here with Secretary Gray a few years ago that it was understanding that all of that money was going to the OSR fund, the Oil Site Restoration Fund. But I didn't find out till recently or a few months ago that half of it goes to the department, half of it goes to the RSR fund. So what this bill basically does is if somebody has that owes a well assessment to the state and they plug a well, they can get a $4.50 credit off of the fee they're paying towards towards the OSR assessment. That may not be the exact right words, but anyhow, that's the main aspect of the bill. That $4.50 is less than half of what it would cost the state to plug these wells if they go orphan. And that's about the size of it, Mr. Chairman. Any questions?
Yeah, we do have a few questions, and we do have some people wishing to speak in support of the bill. Have cards of support of the bill, but we do have a few questions. Representative Zarang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative McCormick, I fully appreciate your intent to try to cap these orphan wells. I think it's important we need to address that. But my concern is, aren't they obligated to cap it themselves already?
Yes, that they are obligated.
So we would be giving them a credit, which would essentially be taking money away from the state that could be used to cap those other wells.
Well, I guess you could say that's right, but from the research the state has done, these wells are likely to go orphan. So the more of these wells we can get plugged by the individual and not the state, the less likely that is to happen.
Oh, I agree that the individual who's obligated, who should be capping it anyway, should cap that. Also looking at the fiscal note, I'll put on my appropriations hat right now and looking at the fiscal note, it's pretty substantial. This is going to have to be dual referred as it is and then go to appropriations. But one of the things I want to ask too, that companies that they're keeping their wells inactive in order to not take the black eye of abandoning it, those companies, I would assume, they have no intention of capping it. They're looking for a credit. Wouldn't they just continue to extend it to be able to take access to utilize the credit?
I don't know. You're going to repeat your question.
So the credit, right now, if they haven't capped it within 5 years,
well, if it's been inactive
for 5 years, and so you're saying that if they would get a credit for the money they've already paid, fined, and penalty, that they would apply that to the capping?
No, that's not the intent of the bill. The intent of the bill is any well that's been on the inactive list for 5 years or more has to pay an inactive fee to the state. Mm-hmm. And that was supposedly put on there to discourage people from having wells inactive for 5 years or more. So if they owe the state $3,000 and they plug a well that has a credit for $4,500, it just means they don't have to pay that $3,000 fee. It's only they don't get money back from the state. It just allows them not to pay this well assessment.
Okay.
For no more than what they They can't get money from the state back. We're not going into the general fund and getting money.
And I understand and I appreciate that. So you're saying that these wells would never be capped? You're targeting those that more than likely?
I'm not saying they'd never be capped. I'm saying the well assessment fee was to discourage wells from being on that list. And I'm saying they would be able to, when you have an operator that, in the last year, they've made no money. There was depressed oil prices, and they had to pay an $18,000 fee to the state. They could have taken that $18,000 and actually credited it, used it to plug wells with. Yes, wells that are in risk of going orphan.
Okay, I understand. But if they had to pay the $18,000, why didn't they just go ahead and cap it at that time?
Well, there's the $18,000. There may be that $18,000 may be 30 wells. It may cost $250,000 to plug those wells.
So it's not a per well fee? You're saying that if he has 30 wells, it's only...
the fee per well is so small you can't plug the well for the fee though. The department probably knows the exact numbers, but if the fee per well is $200 and it costs $7,000 or $8,000 to plug the well, it's by far cheaper to pay the well assessment fee than it is to plug the well.
Okay. I understand, and I think the department is here, and I have a few questions for them I'd like to ask. But no, I appreciate your intent. I think we need to cap these orphan wells.
Well, I've been in this business my entire life. These wells need to be capped, and so this is just trying of a creative way to do that. And
we do have other questions, but Rep. Zarang, if you want to hold, we can call the department up now. If you have questions.
No,
for
we
them?
can wait. I'd like to have more discussion.
Okay. All right. Question, Representative Zarang. I'm sorry, Landry. Representative.
Thank you, Chair. Rep. McCormick, I think I understand exactly what you're doing, and I was part of this group with you. So let's say I'm moving a rig in to do a workover job, right? And let's say I've been looking at 3 nasty wellheads that I might have bought this field with, right? So if I mobilize that rig in and I'm incentivized to get a discount on my OSR fee, it's way cheaper for me to take that one rig that I'm mobilizing in to rework this well, but then just jump it over to those 3 wells and get a discount, right? Is that kind of similar what I think we would be trying to do here? And then I think the other situation is there's a lot of good wells here in Louisiana still, but they're very uneconomical. If I'm told I have to take 4 wells to produce 1 well, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the state of Louisiana allows you sometimes to petition them to take just that 1 well in that field, right?
I don't know if they're allowing you to cherry pick now or not. Used to they didn't, but I don't know their current.
But in my mind with this bill, it also incentivizes someone to come, and even though you cherry pick that well and this bill's in place, I might be more reluctant to bring that rig back on that well I just cherry picked, rework that well, and then jump over to those wells in P&A. I think the biggest thing that I like about this bill is I don't think people understand the mitigated risk for the state to be in the P&A business.
Right.
So when you have an operator that does this every day, day in and day out, that knows how to cement, knows how to plug, knows how to do all these things, the bid actually to P&A wells in Louisiana, if you could look at the bid list, but I could take the same well that they're P&A in through the state, and I can do it for probably a third to 2/3 cheaper, right?
That's correct.
So, and I think when you look at the fiscal note, everything's a fiscal note, right? And I know the department will probably comment, but I really think this bill has good body to it. We could probably tweak it on it a little more, but upon time, I'll move favorable, Chairman.
And I will say that I'll be willing to work with the department however they will to make this work and maybe start this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Landry. Representative DeWitt for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rep. McCormick, you were going kind of fast with those numbers a while ago. Would you mind, after, it was like 1,000 orphan wells, and then next, what was next?
No, I think there's over 4,000 in the state, just in this one field.
No, I'm talking about this one field, in Caddo Field.
1,003.
Okay, and then the next number, that's what I missed.
There were 11,298.
Got wells.
Total, yes.
And then inactive, I guess, how many?
No, the inactive wells are 3,732.
Okay. That's the number I missed. and
Right.
I was just trying to get that. So I guess my question is, do they require bonding or any kind of pollution bonding in these inactive wells?
Well, not particularly. When wells have been inactive for 5 years or more, they are required to get a bond on them.
Okay.
So, but there are several wells that are grandfathered in that doesn't have a bond on them. But if you're on the inactive list for 5 years or more, you're required to bond them.
Okay. So if
is my understanding.
And Mr. Secretary, maybe you can confirm that whenever y'all come to the table. So that's what I guess that's what I'm wondering, if they're bonded, would we need to allow them to get the credit? I guess.
Say it one more time.
If they're bonded, let's say the well was bonded, would we need to let them get a credit? The owner?
Yeah, if there've been, yes, I would think so. I mean, that's going to encourage them to go ahead. You know, the secretary can probably talk about issues they've had in the past with collecting bonds and
Yes,
different
sir.
things. I don't know all the details.
That's what I just don't want to, I guess, if they're bonded and required to plug the well, there's no use to give those folks a credit on those wells if they have the bond. But I know some things were grandfathered in, happened way before we know your field over there. I've done a lot of work in that area. I know that's an old field, and I'm sure a lot of those wells are grandfathered in, what you're talking about.
And I guess my comment would be that'd be the wells we want to target most.
Yes, sir.
That have been inactive for 5 years or more. 'Cause
Yes, sir.
The older they get, the longer they go inactive, the more likely.
And I appreciate what you're doing, by the
Right.
way. I think that's a great idea. You got a great bill. I just want to make sure those wells are not included if they have a bond and with not getting the credits, what I'm talking about.
So Blake Canfield, Executive Council, Department of Conservation and Energy. I guess as was mentioned, any well that's inactive for 5 years or more does have to get financial security or bond. If that well was plugged, the offset or the credit that this bill would provide is to a different assessment that is paid into split. Half of it goes into the Oilfield Site Restoration Fund, half of it goes into the regulatory fund that helps fund the administration of this and other programs. The well, of course, once plugged, would be removed from any bond.
Yes.
That would be covered. I don't see this as necessarily affecting the bond if it covered other wells. In other words, I think this credit more just affects that assessment.
Yeah, you understand my concern, right? Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I don't see this as changing the bonding requirement.
Okay. Because, I mean, if I can get a credit, I would do that before I would do the bonding. So I just want to make sure that somebody's not trying to double dip.
And just real quickly, the only other thing I would mention is that the language in the bill actually says any well that's been in existence for 10 years. So theoretically, you could have a well that's been inactive for less than 5 years, would not need a bond. I just wanted to make that mention. I know the intent is to focus on those inactive wells that have been inactive for a long time, but the way that the bill is written, it could apply to a well that was, theoretically, any well that's been around for 10 years.
And so when somebody produces a well now, do they have to have a cleanup bond now that we've kind of...
So it is a bond that cover the plugging, abandonment, site restoration in accordance with our rules. The way that the law is currently written is any new well, so new drill well, or any well that is being transferred from one operator to another has to get a bond. And then also any wells that are inactive for 5 years or more. If you don't meet any of those, qualifications, then the law does not currently require you to have a bond.
Okay. That's thank you for clearing that up, because I want to make sure that we've corrected that so we don't continue this orphan well direction that's happened in the past and never catch up.
Yeah, there have been a lot of corrections and changes over time, but obviously it's kind of a moving target. We do have increase in inactive and orphan wells, and so we're have been and are currently in the process of trying to find solutions.
Right. And again, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one other thing on that 5 years. I think there's a little bit of confusion in our regulation also that we need to work on ourselves, because that regulation also says any well that's been inactive for 5 or more years should be plugged, or is required to be plugged. If it has future utility, you can then pay that fee for the inactive well fee. If it does not have future utility, then no future utility wells must be plugged within 90 days of that classification, right? So I think it's important to understand, like, the fee was not designed to allow for wells to be inactive for 40 or more years. It was designed to allow for these wells to stay in that classification in downturns in the industry, so that if it was not profitable to produce, you still would have your well so that you could turn it on at a later date. I think it's gotten to a point where, and we are currently reviewing this within the department, of how to get away from that structure. It's been used as a way to, like I think Rep. Zarang said, to kind of shed yourself of that plugging liability and just pay this fee for as long as you can pay it.
Yeah. And look, Rep. McCormick knows this area. It's probably one of the most beautiful areas that I think has a significant amount of oil wells on the lake itself. And, do you know of any other in the state that has that many wells on the lake? Actually, in the lake?
Personally, I don't. It's the home of the first over-the-water oil well in 1911, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
so
sir.
Not aware of that.
And I know that's your concern too, is a lot of people in your district probably fish that lake and want to see it.
There's been oil wells on that lake since 1911.
Yeah.
So actually, at one time, they were the platforms you could walk from the bank almost all the way across the lake. I've seen the pictures.
Wow.
It was before my time, but wooden platform.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for
Thank
what
you,
you're doing.
Representative DeWitt. Question, Vice Chair Orgeron.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. All right, my question is something that Representative Landry had said about the differentiation between the state doing an orphan well versus the normal operator, or wherever the benefit for your bill would be doing the orphan well. It made it sound as if C&E has their own plug and abandonment team somewhere stashed away that goes out and works.
We contract.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll do contract, just as any well owner would maybe contract in the same manner. So basically, the differentiation he's making is the cost differential between the state managing it versus the actual liability holder managing it, and how that all plays out. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, so, obviously we have more statistics on the wells that we plug through our contractors than we do for kind of the internal information that the companies have. But I think there are different scenarios. Like, you would have, in some cases, operators that maybe have their own rigs or their own, equipment. And so, of course, they could probably do that quicker, cheaper. But the other thing that Representative Landry said is also true. If they are already doing work over, or they're doing something else where they have to have the rig on site, the mob, demob, I know portion of the cost is like the greatest part. So
Correct.
If you're able to do that, that could be cheaper. And then the last thing I have heard, just internally, is when we go in contract, we're going to have whatever records are in our file, but there may be things that were not included in the record by previous owners typically, but that the current owner knows. So the current owner could have gone down hole previously, figured out what the situation is, know what they're facing before they show up. Whereas if our records are unclear as to what's down hole, the contractor gets out there, they've gone out there with equipment assuming one thing, they get out there, they find down hole there's a different problem, then that leads to change orders, additional costs. So I think all those things can lead to an increased cost.
Thank you very much. You've conjured a bunch of nightmares that I had back whenever we had to call out cold tubing after doing a lead impression and finding a hammer down hole at 6,000 feet. So I totally understand. Thank you very much for answering the questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair Orgeron. There are no further questions. Thank both of you for being up there. Thank you.
I guess I do have a question for the department. I mean, I want to work with them moving forward. I definitely don't want this to be.
Understand.
What would just you tell me what you want to do? How's that sound?
Okay, so I would say what we really need to work through and what we really need to get a better understanding of, and I'll provide the example of an operator with 10 wells. The bill currently doesn't address whether someone could plug their own wells or not. So if they're going out and, as Rep. Zarang said, going and doing what they're already required to do by law, they're then receiving a $4.50 per foot credit to do that. So if they go out and plug, I think the example that we have here is 10 wells. Oh, I should have had it already.
This is something already in place, is that correct?
No, this is not. We already have a program that is in place. You have to plug 10 wells, and the credit that you receive is much lower than that $4.50 per foot. But if you plug 10 wells, say at 2,000 feet, you're generating a credit of roughly $500,000. Your inactive well fee is not going to be $500,000. So in essence, you're not paying. You could create a situation where an operator would not be paying this fee for decades. And this fee goes toward the operations of the department. So in essence, what we would then be doing is the department would be relying on future appropriations. And based on the fiscal note that we had, it would be somewhere around $1 million a year that we would need in additional appropriations to keep up with the credit program. And we also ran it based on if this were the case last year, and if operators went out and plugged the wells that they already owned, the number of wells that were plugged in 2025 that were 10 years or older was 422. The total footage was 3.1 million feet of wells. The credit at $4.50 a credit would generate $14 million in credits. The inactive well assessment reduction for that total of 422 wells at 3.1 million feet would be $2 million roughly. So you would have a credit generated total of all these wells that are being plugged of $14 million, of which only $2 million was due that year. So we need to figure out a more appropriate way to not require the department to be dependent on future appropriations if this program were to move forward.
So I think Representative Zarang mentioned earlier that it's going to be dual referred to appropriations. So if it comes out of this committee today, before you go to appropriations, y'all would need to work that out.
Yeah,
because I know
that
Chairman
sounds
McFarland
good.
doesn't want
And just
anything.
for food for thought for the department, if we want to just credit it towards the part that goes to the OSR fund and doesn't negatively affect their budget, I'm willing to do that amendment. So if we could go in favorably pass it today, I'll keep working with the department.
Well, and Chairman McFarland doesn't want to send in bills over that have a fiscal note unless you have a way to pay for that by reduction somewhere else. So you're going to have some work in between here and appropriations.
So just to be clear, I said the 2,000 feet is 10 wells averaging 10,000 feet would generate $450,000 in credits. Yeah. So just to be clear.
Okay. All right. So Representative Zarang for a question.
Yes, and I apologize. I had another issue with a bill that had to step out. And I think, just to reiterate, I think Representative DeWitt made a great point about, bonded wells. We should not give credit for that. But my question is the impact associated with the cost. I mean, considering the number of abandoned wells, we're talking hundreds of millions, close to $1 billion in terms of cost associated with this that would need to be addressed. Right?
For orphan wells in general.
For orphan wells.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely in the hundreds of millions. We've had some different assessments done. Obviously, depending on the location, they can be more expensive. If you start looking at like the nearshore, offshore, that alone is hundreds of millions. The majority of the orphan wells that exist, though, of course, are in North Louisiana. Caddo Pine Island, I think, may be the largest.
Yeah, that's the most, but the most expensive would be in y'all's area of the state.
But the issue of orphan wells, right? It's just there's way more need than there is money available.
And again, the state has a program currently in place where you can plug an orphan well and receive credit. We also provide the opportunity, if you take on an orphan well, and I believe it's until it's in production, you do not have to pay financial security on that. But we have opportunities for people to recycle those assets, right? So we've been trying to be creative how we do that. We were working on other options, but yes, it's more the orphan well issue that we're dealing with, not so much.
Mr. Secretary, I didn't mean to interrupt him, sorry, but didn't we do something last year or year before to increase the orphan well fund to like $600 million?
Yeah, so what we did was.
Remind us what that was.
We increased the OSR fee, which was part of Rep. Landry's bill that we discussed today, right? Reconciling that with the changes in severance. We increased that fee. And then on top of that, we also have this inactive well fee, which 50% goes to OSR and 50% goes to the operations of the department. In addition to that, we created the Natural Resources Trust Authority, which reviews financial security to make sure it's adequate so that we don't end up in the same situation we did with Laura. And in that same vein, they manage the OSR fund. They can bond it out. We're working on figuring out ways that we can do that more creatively. and also they take on the federal dollars that we get as well. So they're managing all of that. We have someone with financial know-how to do that, as opposed to having our engineers and geologists really trying to manage it.
Right, and I appreciate that effort. And Representative McCormick, I know you've been involved in this industry, and I fully respect the fact that you're working to try to address this concern. I understand 100%, but my concern, I mean, I think the estimates that we've seen when we took up that bill you referenced 2 years ago, Chairman, just in North Louisiana, the abandoned wells are $800 million, the cost associated with capping just North Louisiana. So my concern with the bill is that you're taking away money, potentially taking away money from a fund that the state is going to use to cap wells, incentivizing folks that it's their responsibility. They should have known when they got into it. You're saying that if they got a couple wells, they assumed them, they took them over. They knew well that they have a responsibility that ultimately, if they have to cap it, it's on their dime or bonded out as such. And that's my concern, that it's going to dilute our ability as a state to use the limited dollars that we do have to cap those abandoned wells. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Zarang. All right, there are no further questions. Thank you very much. We do have cards in support. Mike Moncla with Louisiana Oil and Gas Association. We have card in support from Kevin Hayes, Louisiana Landowners Association, both in support, not wishing to speak. There are no cards in opposition. Representative McCormick, we do need to take up an amendment, I believe.
That's correct, a technical amendment.
Ms. Stoller, could you read in the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is amendment set number 2650. The amendment adds the word "and" on page 2, line 8, after abandoned. So with the amendment, the beginning of that sentence would read, "Wells shall be plugged and abandoned and sites restored," and et cetera.
All right. And I would offer up that amendment number 2650. Is there any objection to that amendment? Seeing none, that amendment is adopted. We're back on the bill for closing as amended. Representative McCormick.
Thank you, committee. I'll just be quick. I think this is a very, working with the department, we can move ahead with this bill, and we can use our dollars wisely to address the inactive well problem in Louisiana.
All right, there was, you want to take a question on closing?
Sure.
Representative Bryant.
I think they came in and voiced some concerns. You think your bill doesn't address, like your bill is fine in its current posture, or you'll have to work through some amendments and changes?
Yeah, I'm going to work with the department, however they want, to make sure it has a negative impact on the department from a fiscal standpoint.
Yeah, but Brian, it does go to appropriations, so.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's my understanding, yes. Mhm. So there is a chance for them to work between if y'all want to move it out.
So there's nothing we can do now? No amendments? Nothing? Okay, all right.
Thank you, Rep. Bryant. Representative Zarang.
Yeah, and thank you. To that point, I don't want to belabor it. Again, appreciate your effort. I was going to object, but with the fact of the matter that it is going to go to appropriations and your willingness to work with the department, great. I hope we can work something out. Good deal.
You have to work it out, or Chairman McFarland's going to put it in the trash can, so. All right, there is a motion by Representative Landry to move forward on House Bill 596 as amended. Is there any objection to that motion? Seeing none, House Bill 596 as amended is reported favorable. Next bill, Representative Reiser, House Bill 631. Ms. Stoller, could you read in 631, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 631 by Representative Reiser establishes a non-resident landowner bear hunting license.
Thank you, Ms. Stoller. Representative Reiser, on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, 631 does that. Previously, we had allowed for residents only, and the reason for that, we wanted to make sure that we were in state in compliance and laid out the groundwork on how we control things. And now we're expanding back. Other states allow out-of-state license, and we're now, you look through the bill, it does not say inside the language, but it says inside the rules that this will be for out-of-state property owners only that can make the application. And that's be a bear license fee for 100. It allows them to participate in the lottery. the lottery draw.
All right, we do have questions. Representative Lacombe for a question. Trying to make it, there you go.
Representative Reiser, so this will allow out-of-state people who are residents of out-of-state, domiciled, whatever state, who actually physically own property in Louisiana?
Correct.
If they, well, now, I guess maybe Cole, if they participate in the lottery, win a tag in the lottery, they cannot personally, at this point in time, use that on their own property?
That's correct, Rep. Lacombe. Cole Garrett, General Counsel. So the way it's currently set up is only residents have the ability to harvest bears. However, landowners with qualifying acreage within open areas can participate in the lottery. And so we've actually had a couple of occurrences where somebody domiciled in another state who owns property in Louisiana has received a bear lottery tag and then had to find a resident to go utilize that tag who could be able to get a license. So this is kind of recognizing, look, these landowners pay taxes in their local communities. They provide bear habitat. They're helping us with this resource, and so allowing them to utilize their property to harvest an animal is probably a good move. We did purposely let residents have kind of first crack at the first two seasons, and now we seek to open it up.
How many bear tags have y'all issued in the last couple of years?
11 the first year, and then 26 this past season.
So all of those were residents of Louisiana who harvested?
Correct.
Okay. And I, up front, I looked at this, I was looking at the fee, you're charging them essentially $100. So they pay the lottery, they win, and if they win, then to harvest, they buy another permit for $100?
That's correct.
Okay, so, look, my personal view on this was that I think that the fee was too low. After discussions with you, I do understand your rationale on the fact that, they already own property here, they're paying taxes, doing some stuff, but I was looking through, I didn't see the landowner in the bill as we were looking. I know you said it was in the regs. I would like you to verify that to make sure, because I don't want this to be opened up to somebody from Missouri or Kansas to come down here and pay $100 and be able to kill a bear.
Understood, and I will, yes, to the extent I wasn't clear earlier, the regulations only allow for landowners to be issued, a non-resident landowner to be issued the tag and then utilize, if this bill were to pass that license. It would not be open up for Joe Blow who lives in whatever other state to just come in with no nexus to the state and be able to hunt Louisiana black bears.
Well, and I think my point was that may be a day that it comes to that, but it certainly won't be for a fee of $100. I could tell you, that's my personal feelings on it.
And I think we would agree with you on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Lacombe. Members, remind you, we go in at 1 o'clock, it's 11:30. Representative DeWitt.
This sounds like it's geared toward me there, Mr. Chair. I promise I'll keep it short. What are other states charging for out-of-state folks to kill a bear?
I have not even done the research on it. Again, this is geared towards non-resident landowners, so it's not going to open it up to Rep. Lacombe's point to just willy-nilly non-residents coming in here and harvesting the resource.
So does other states have non-resident landowner permits for bear?
Again, I didn't do the research on that. Be happy to look
And
at it.
if they do you know what that is?
But I'll gladly do the research and get it to you. Apologies for not being prepared for that question.
And Representative DeWitt, this goes back to discussion you and I had actually probably in the last hunting season, where other states don't treat landholders equally.
No.
And if you own land inside a state, the rationale kind of could be, in my mind, that they've done destructive. And if you're a landowner there, whatever you're hunting, hopefully you're conserving and treating the land right. So some of it's based on that discussion.
And I would echo that.
And look, it's other states are treating out-of-staters tremendously wrong. Guys who own the property, pay taxes, like you said, and now the people that live in state feel like that they're taking the resource, and they say they're charging these outrageous fees and permits, and that's why I've had discussions with you about going to reciprocity of if that state over there, if that gentleman is from Missouri, what is Missouri charging an out-of-state Louisiana guy to go over there and shoot that bear? It should be the same. That's all. I would ask the Bill Arthur at some point in time between now and the floor, if it gets out of here today, that we look at doing that.
On reciprocating?
Yes, sir.
I agree with you on that. The other states, without calling the states, and at some point if I need to, but they're using their legislative power to keep landowners in other states and not treat them equally. In my opinion.
No, there's no doubt it's going on, and I just want to get to where Louisiana gets back to where it was at one time with Mississippi. I think that they went up on their deer license on people from Louisiana, and
I remember that.
And we addressed it, and we addressed it, and it went away.
Yeah.
So I think we need to look at that, and that'll be a department issue. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just to be clear, the rationale is kind of to get away from this kind of upward ratcheting and each state trying to stick it to non-residents. The appreciation of landowners who are creating habitats susceptible of having bears is a good thing to us, whether they're domiciled here or not. So that's kind of the rationale.
Representative Domain, did you have a question, or you're out? Okay. Representative Mack for a really quick question.
Really quick, I just want to say thank you, Rep. Reiser, for bringing the bill. I think it's a great bill. I like to go fishing every now and then in Lake Okissa in Mississippi, Louisiana. It's one of the most beautiful lakes, and the water's crystal clear, and when you catch a bass over there, it's just one of the most incredible things. I think we need to be partners with residents from out of our state, the landowners inside the state. So thank you for bringing the bill. It's a great bill. At the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion. We move the bill favorably.
Thank you, Representative Mack. There are no further questions. Thank you, Cole. Representative Reiser, you do have a waive closing. There's a motion by Representative Mack to move favorable on House Bill 631. Is there any objection to that motion? Seeing no objection, House Bill 631 is reported favorable. Next bill, House Bill 770 by Vice Chair Orgeron. Ms. Stalder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 770 by Representative Orgeron decreases the term of oyster leases on state water bottoms.
Thank you, Ms. Stalder. Representative Vice Chair Orgeron for your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 770 basically tries to do one thing and one thing only. I do believe we have an amendment to put it in the proper posture. Rep. Reiser in the chair.
Recognize that. I've looked at a lot of cards. Rep. Reiser in the chair, acting chair. You have 7 amendments to offer up?
Yes, Ms. Stalder has them.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. Members, this is amendment set number 2043. It is in your folders and available online. The amendments change each instance of 5 to 6 in the bill.
Amendments. You have the amendments before you. Any objection to the amendments?
That's all it does is basically the intent originally was to match the term of oyster leases to be the same as the basic temporal time scale and cycle of the CPRA Coastal Master Plan, knowing that the oyster leases would never be on the same exact cycle, just instead of the Coastal Master Plan being updated every 6 years and oyster leases being every 15 years. The initial plan was to just basically have the oyster leases being renewable in 6-year increments rather than the current 15-year increments.
See no questions on the amendments? Any objection to the adoption of the amendments? Hearing no objection, amendment stand adopted. Back on your bill in the amended form.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so one thing that y'all are well aware of is that, well, I love oysters. I love supporting the oyster industry, both on bottom traditional as well as AOC. Y'all know that I do a lot of work for the alternative oyster cultivation, specifically in my little area of Grand Isle. I've been supporting them for a long time. And in that, I am also very passionate about coastal restoration. And that's basically where we start getting into some issues of certain types of coastal restoration activities come in conflict with some of the oyster leases. So the whole idea of matching the length of the oyster leases to the coastal master plan was an intent to be able to make it a little bit easier to notify specific, oyster leaseholders whenever there's a particular project in line and in an area, and then that way Wildlife and Fisheries could simply not renew that lease. And I know that that offends people that are here in the room to know that the blood, sweat, and tears that they put into a particular lease, there is a mechanism by which they can get a payout or a partial lease recovery, price recovery, which we're going to hear much more about a little bit later hopefully from Wildlife and Fisheries and others. But that's basically the total rationale. I'm going to probably pass and let proponents and then opponents quickly. I know that we have one particular presentation from Mr. Earl Mellison that I'd really like to hear about it. I know that he's not necessarily a full-fledged proponent of my bill, but I trust and I value his knowledge on this particular subjects to the nth degree, and that's why I do want to see and hear his presentation. With that, I do want to also add that in my research, looking, I think, from Louisiana Sea Grant and Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, asking about if one of us want to go and begin oystering on bottom oysters, what would be the timeline required? And basically, timeline required to obtain a lease, prepare foundation, plant seed, and then ultimately have to wait to harvest a 3-inch marketable oyster. And the answer was 2.5 to 4 years. And it gives a breakdown of the amount of time required to go to Wildlife and Fisheries, basically boundary surveys, habitat, public notice records, conflict checks, etc., preparing the water bottom, putting the culch down, and preparing it, transporting it, deploying it, all of that stuff, and eventually seeding it and being able to grow the oysters before being able to do it. So I know that these oystermen are always in line of natural disasters, man-made disasters, which we've seen recently, as well as other variables that cause them to have problems. So there may be a little bit longer time than that 4-year maximum. So hence the 6-year for the master plan time cycle is how I arrived at changing this particular lease scale. With that being said, if
you have a question,
okay, I will take a question.
Representative Ryan.
Just a quick one, Mr. Acting Chair. Representative Ogeron, to be clear, this bill is prospective, right? It's not going to address or affect any of the existing leases, right?
Correct. If a lease, as I was about to start showing, like one that was renewed last year, would actually expire not till 2040. Thus, this bill, once becoming effective, would not take effect and be renewed as a 6-year term until 2040, expiring then in 2046.
All future leases.
All leases currently in place, currently renewed or in effect, would all do their normal expiration term. It would only be prospective. That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Acting Chairman.
Mr. Acting Chairman, if it would be possible, if you could put on the laptop display.
Okay.
I'm just going to show This is, I'm going to back out so you could see, get some reference on where we're at. This is currently available on the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries website. This is if you just go Wildlife and Fisheries Commercial Oyster Maps, boom, you're going to be right here. And basically what you see is New Orleans, the Barataria, Terrebonne, and Breton areas. And whenever I get to this level of scale, you see a few little geo shapes in here. I'm going to continue to zoom in. Every one of these is an oyster lease, and some of the ones that are basically had some of my concern. Of course, I'm very interested in the areas where Neptune Pass is.
Can you orientate me as far as near town or something here? Just kind of where we
New Orleans. Let's go up to New Orleans. Yeah. I mean, I thought that's why I was zoomed out for you there. A little bit further.
Yeah.
There's the city of New Orleans, the mouth of the river, Grand Isle right there. And basically on the east side of the river, just south of Buras, we have an area that has some leases still in there. This is where the east bank of the river is blown out, a lot of fresh water. The viability of growing oysters in this area is minimalized, I would think, because of all the fresh water. Here you have a lease that actually runs across a navigable waterway or a waterway right there. And you could click on these and it'll come up and show the data of who the leaseholder is, when it was done. So this is one particular lease that actually a portion of it was bought by CPRA. I'm going to say for the record, I did speak with Michael Hare of CPRA. I asked him to have somebody here with a white card to be able to answer questions. I texted him earlier. As of now, I did not see anybody here from CPRA. But nonetheless, so this is a lease that was actually done by CPRA, and you could see, even though it's in an area that has a lot of fresh water, might not be actually productive, it basically was renewed last year in 2025 for a 15-year term to 2040. So this is kind of some of the concerns that I have. I believe there's another lease. Let's see if I could find it, like maybe, I don't know if it's this one right here, but another one that was also not bought out by CPRA in any way, but recently basically renewed as of last year. So in this space of a very difficult task of harvesting on-bottom oysters, blood, sweat, and tears for all these men that produce this valuable resource for Louisiana. There's also a little bit of speculative leasing sometimes in this area that has a slight conflict with coastal restoration projects. And basically the bill in its current form at 6 years was just an effort to try to balance some stakeholder user conflict with common good. I mean, just yesterday we were talking about eminent domain and for public good, basically utilizing or getting servitudes on land. All of these water bottoms that are shown here, for the most part, are all public water bottoms. They're owned by the state, and they're leased to these oyster farmers to be able to, for the purpose of cultivating oysters. And we'll get more, I think, on the question and answer session of this. But I think that's pretty much the only other thing is that I was going to say is that I did reach out to a couple of private landowners, so that's not involved in the 15-year Department of Wildlife and Fisheries lease area, but companies like ConocoPhillips, Wisner, and Apache, and just said, y'all tell me what y'all oyster leases are. And ConocoPhillips came back and said, we lease oyster leases on our property 5-year terms at a time. Wisner, that's involved with the city of New Orleans, also 5-year oyster lease terms. And Apache responded back saying it's either a 3-year term or a 5-year term. So it seems that in the private space, 5 years is a common standard. But
I didn't know any of that whenever the first iteration of this bill came out, 5 years. I was just thinking of when we start working on master plan every 5 years, but then whenever I realized the master plan actually is a 6-year cycle, we just work on it a year ahead of time. That's why I changed the bill. Any other questions, Mr. Acting Chair?
You have, the board is clear?
All right.
Okay, members, we're going to structure it this way. We have those from information only. We have Mr. Earl Malonson. He would like to speak. We have Patrick Banks with Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. He's present if requested. Mr. Cole Garrett, also Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, requested.
I'll come back.
You'll go ahead. Okay, you'll go ahead and relieve that.
Yes, sir.
And
I'd like them 3 here.
So those we have in the overflow, we're going to have, since Mr. Malonson would like to speak, if you'd come forward and we can provide all the information we have, and that'll be available for the proponents and opponents.
Is that it?
The proponents will go after that. Those, the opponents, the way I'll do this, we have 3 mics that's available at the witness table. I will say current, and that means that you'll come. And since some people might be in the overflow room, you'll just be on standby. I'll read those 3 cards too. So I'll read 3 current, you'll come forward. Those on standby, know that if you're in the other room, you'll move next in order. So you'll know that you'll be up next. Representative Zerang, you have a question for the...
It's on the hard drive.
Yes, sir. It's not a question. It's important to the presentation Dr. Malonson is going to give. Obviously, as Representative Ogeron said, he's world-renowned in terms of his expertise. I think he's going to provide valuable information. But if we're on a 3-minute rule, I think he needed a couple extra minutes. So I would offer my 3 minutes, and I know Representative Ogeron too, to give him a little flexibility. He said it'd be about 10. So
the chair will allow, because I think all the information available for proponents and opponents will be relevant. Dr. Malonson, you have the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Earl Malonson. I have a PhD in marine science fisheries. Been with Louisiana Sea Grant for 10 years now. Before Louisiana Sea Grant, I worked for Nicholls State University for 40 years and retired as Emeritus Distinguished Professor. And all of those 50 years, I've been working with the oyster industry and doing significant research and outreach to them. So the chairman of the Oyster Task Force, Mr. Mitch Jursich, asked that I just give some information. I'm here not for or against this bill. I'm here just to give you some information, and the information deals with time. Time in terms of what it takes to do an oyster lease. So with that, let me begin once I get my glasses on. Just want to show you this. This just shows you what's been happening in the last 25 years in Louisiana. If you look at 1999, you can see in black. The black is where most of the oysters being produced in Louisiana were coming off the public leases. This is the public oyster grounds. If you see the charcoal, that's the private lease grounds. So you can see what's happened to the public lease grounds over the last 20 years. Virtually all of the production today is coming from the private leases. The public grounds are not producing like they used to. We are still the national leader in Louisiana, in the nation for oyster production. About 35% or more of all the oysters produced in the nation come from Louisiana, but it's on the back of the private industry right now. If you look at this is some research we've done in the past where we looked at the primary habitat zones for oysters. And if you look at the blue area would be where during very wet years, when you have high rain activity, when you have the high Mississippi River flowing, it pushes the salinity habitat zone further south in the estuaries. If you look at where that star is, you're going to see it in more of the yellowish area. That's the area where you can find oysters pretty much all the time, whether it be a wet year or a drought year. If you look at the green, it's where you can find oysters primarily on the bottom, living and ready for production, commercial production, when we have drought years. So the habitat changes over time, and the fishermen have to move with that habitat change. And I want you to keep in mind where that red star is, because you're going to see it a few more slides as well. If you look all the way up in the top right, you would also see that I've listed there the Biloxi Marsh, and I'll come back and talk about the Biloxi Marsh. You can see its color as well, showing that it's a highly productive area. This is a drought year. This is looking at Barataria Bay, and look where that star is. That's the same star that you saw on the slide prior. In this, you can see where the 5 line is. That's 5 parts per thousand salinity. You can also see where the 15 parts per thousand salinity is. For oysters, they're resting on the bottom, so they're going to be not only physiologically stressed if there's very low salinity, they're also going to be very vulnerable to predation from predators when you get to high salinity. So that 5 to 15 part per thousand salinity, that 5 to 15 range, is the range where you see most oysters that can survive in large numbers for natural production. And that's characteristic all through Louisiana and all through the northern Gulf of Mexico. And here you can see the Barataria Basin, and you can see where the star is, and you can see it's still within that good area. That's because that star is actually in Hackberry Bay. Hackberry Bay is a public oyster reef zone. It's a public ground. But if you look where the 5 is, way up in the top of the estuary, that's telling you that this has to be a drought year, because you're getting a lot of Gulf water coming in, and you're not getting much rainwater or Mississippi River water coming in. Now, look at 1993. Look at the 5 part per thousand line, how it went further south in the estuary. And also the 15 part per thousand went further south in the estuary. So this comes back to that first map I showed you, where you had the green for the drought years and the blue for the wet years, because the oysters have to move back and forth. What's interesting is if you look at that yellow zone area where you have natural production, whether you have a normal wet year or you have a normal dry year, drought year, when I say normal, I mean outside of incredible river stages at times, or excessive rain. So the public grounds are strategically placed there. And that is also where you would like to see most of the natural resources placed for the commercial oyster leasemen, the commercial men who have oyster leases. There are about 400,000 acres of leases in Louisiana that stretch all the way from the Atchafalaya all the way to the Biloxi Marsh, the Mississippi-Louisiana line. So it's not just those around the Mississippi River that you have oyster leases. They are all through the estuaries, the deltaic area of Louisiana. So you have oystermen who need leases, not only in this prime area where you see the star, but at times leases are going to be productive for them in the upper area when we have drought conditions, and in the lower area where they have wet conditions. This is some real data that I collected from a fisherman. He gave me this data many years ago, and I took the data and I tried to look at how the wet and dry years are going to have an influence on his production on these leases. He has leases in both wet areas, dry areas, that nice yellow area where you can get them all the time. You see the star there, you see the public grounds. That's Hackberry Bay again. That's showing you where you get production a good bit. You notice you're not seeing a lot of production some years. That's because the bay, the public grounds are open every other year, and if they're getting good production off the private leases, sometimes they just don't fool with the public ground, because it's not beneficial to have to be out there for a common property resource and fight with the other fisherman who's out there trying to get that same oyster. So when production is good on the private leases around Hackberry Bay, some of these fishermen, and this particular fisherman, decided not to fish Hackberry Bay. So don't look at the public ground so much, but what I want you to look at is Area 4 and Area 1. Area 4 is north of Hackberry Bay, up in the high areas where during drought conditions you can get production. So look at number 1990. He's getting production there on his leases in that area. Go back to the slide I showed you in 1986. 1986 was a drought year. He got production on that in drought year, and he was able to still get resource for several years after that, all the way to 90. But then if you take a look at Area 1, Area 1 is in an area that comes productive during the wet years. So look what happened to Area 4. It no longer produced because we were in wet years. But look at Area 1 and the production he's getting out of there. And what I'm trying to get you here to understand in time is that there are some leases that may not be productive for a decade or more. But when they do become productive, they are a treasure for these oystermen. And that's what I'm trying to show you here in terms of time. So in this particular case, it took almost 10 years for this lease to become productive. I don't know where we got to that. That's way too far down. All my slides did not load. I don't know why. I sent my slides in, but they're not loaded. So let me just tell you what. What's that? I can do this, Z. Representative Zarang, I can do this. What I was going to show you is, let's now move away from just the natural reefs where you saw wet and dry zone. The natural production in Louisiana today off the natural reefs, just because of Mother Nature supplying oysters, those reefs in Louisiana cannot sustain the industry at the level it is. The production you're seeing in Louisiana today off the private leases is roughly about, this past year, about 99% of all the oysters sold in Louisiana across the nation came from the private leases. Natural production alone from just basic reefs with old oyster shell down there cannot sustain the industry. The industry has always also had another basic component, and that is to take culch, C-U-L-T-C-H, culch. It could either be limestone, it could be crushed concrete, or it could be natural oyster shell. And in the 20th century, it was mostly oyster shell, and we gradually began to see oyster shell was at a premium. It was used for many things. It became too expensive, so they gravitated towards the end of the 20th century and now into the 21st century, they're gravitating to crushed concrete and limestone. I made a few phone calls the last few days when I was putting this together, just talking to a few fishermen, saying, how much culch are you putting down this year? I had some say, Earl, I'm just putting a little bit down. It's cost me about $6,000 to put the culch down. You get paid for about a ton. You buy it by the ton. Called another one. He said, Earl, I didn't put any down this year. He said, but I used my boat to help other fishermen put culch down. And I was helping them, and they were putting roughly about 5,000 tons down a year. Okay. I talked to two other fishermen, and both of them were putting down roughly 10,000 tons of culch. 10,000 tons of culch cost $675,000. You put the culch down, you heard 2 to 4 years before you get production. I'm a biologist, so I have to be a little more precise than that. You really want to get production to the point where you have 3 cohorts, 3 annual crops there. Now that means you've got to have 3 good years where you have the right salinities. So suppose you have that great opportunity to have 3 years of the right salinity, and you've just invested several $100,000 in culch. Within a year and a half to 2 years, by the end of the 2 years, you've got enough growth on those oysters. We're blessed in the northern Gulf of Mexico to be able to get that 3-inch or 2.5-inch oyster in maybe 18 months. But you're not going to get full-blown production until about 3 years into the process. I'm assuming you've had 3 nice years of good spat set or oyster set, larval set. You produce that kind of culch, or you put down that kind of culch, once you start harvesting, if you're doing it and managing it right, you're probably going to get 5 to 7 years of good production off of that lease from that culch. So you've got your 2 years or 3 years, and then you've got another 5 years, you're already in that 8 to 9 year range for being able to use that lease. And you've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process. Then that's one of the bigger oystermen, okay? But you're still having fishermen putting down $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 worth of shell. So you have a bad year. You get a bad year, that means you didn't get production there. So that means your culture's there, but you don't have production. Or you'll have production, but you're not going to get the next year's crop. So that means that oyster shell, that culture's still there, so let's add another year to it. So now you've got an investment that requires 10 years to get your full return on investment, okay? So time becomes an essence, becomes important here. I have one oysterman that I talked to who was in Biloxi Marsh. Stop and think how many times we opened the Bonnie Carey in the last decade. We've opened it in the last decade 5 times. Actually, 6 times in 5 years. Twice, yeah. So it's kind of like that fisherman at that time told me he put down $1 million worth of culch. 5 years in a row, he got no production on that culch because we opened the Bonnie Carey 5 times. Now, that doesn't mean that oysterman is sitting there saying, well, I'm going to wait till my 6th year and have something. He's got to go out there every year and turn that culch over a little bit. He's got to invest time, money, fuel, labor, because he's got to make sure that that culch doesn't get buried in sediment, even a fine layer of sediment. So you're out there turning that culch over. So here you have a man who's got 5 years lost in Bonnie Carey, out there turning the stuff over with fuel and labor. And now when he starts to finally get production, he's hoping he can get that investment for another 7 years. We're already at 12 years. It's a time thing. And we have wet years, we have dry years. We have those times when we can get recruitment every year, and we're blessed in Louisiana because we're one of the few places left in the nation where we are not recruitment limited, meaning we still have enough oysters in our estuaries to say if they spawn, we'll get it. They'll come, they'll set. But what's good in Terrebonne this year might not be good over there in the Biloxi Marsh. What's good in Terrebonne might not be good in Barataria this year. So each fisherman is going to have leases up and down estuary, and those who are smart will also have it between basins as well. So I was asked by Mitch Jurasich, the chairman, to just come and to tell you my experiences over the last 50 years. And what I've seen and the research I've done is that I'm not here to speak for or against a 5 or 6 or 15 year, but I can tell you the 15 year has been working and has been working well for over a century. And it's up to the legislature to decide whether or not you need to change that, because I do understand coastal restoration. I do understand the importance of it. I understand it well enough to understand it that I'll just say that, beating my own chest, the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana gave me the Stewardship Award for the professional degree, for the professional in 2000, in the year 2000. It was because of my work with the oyster industry. So I'm going to end with just saying coastal restoration is at my heart as well, as is the oyster industry. And I look at the oyster as one of these canary in the coal mines or sentinels in terms of what we call an estuary. And I'll end it there if you have any questions for me.
I have a question, Vice Chair Ogeron.
All right, thank you. Can I get Mr. Patrick Banks and Mr. Garrett Cole up to the table, please, as well?
Again, these are information?
Correct. Great presentation. I'm glad you closed with the coastal restoration, because that's the whole reason for the bill, is not how short can I make a lease to be able to put Oysterman out of business. Absolutely the furthest thing from the truth. It's mainly whenever the contention comes for coastal projects and the speculative leasing for whatever it is that occurs, and how. So that's where the first conversation started with Mr. Banks, and that's how I learned that there was some monies provided to Wildlife and Fisheries to develop. With Ms. Stalder going through the statutes, we found develop a program to determine how this, between CPRA requesting an area, Wildlife and Fishery determining viability of an area, the investment already done on an area, what the payout would be. I understand that a lot of these leases have already gone through. So that basically my question for I guess Mr. Banks first would be, what is the leases that I showed earlier that were portion purchased by CPRA or something like that? How was that calculated? What is it, the work that the funds that were provided from this legislature to Wildlife and Fisheries? What was the goal to enhance that calculation, that estimation? Exactly. Give us a lowdown on exactly that, please.
Patrick Banks, I'm the Fisheries Management Division Administrator at Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. There's a lot wrapped into what you just said, Mr. Orgeron. I'll try to step through it a little bit. In terms of the leases that you showed, a portion of those were purchased through CPRA under what they call the Oyster Lease Compensation Program, OLACP. Unfortunately, I'm not the one to speak to how they make those payments or how they make those calculations, so I'd need to
That's a
defer.
CPRA specific,
That's
hence
correct.
me asking them to be here and them not showing up.
That's correct. So I'd have to defer those answers to them. However, in terms of what the legislature directed us to do a couple of years ago through an appropriation, was to develop a method by which we determine if a lease is able to produce oysters into the future. So one of the things under the law that's required of us upon renewal is provided that we can renew the lease provided that it's capable of oyster production.
How far into the future, just to give?
Well, the law doesn't direct us
All
that
right.
currently. It just
So
says
15 million years from now, it might be dry land, or, I mean, I'm being facetious, but.
Right. It just simply says provided that the lease is
Right.
capable of supporting oyster production.
Got it.
So historically, just for decades and decades, the fact that the person wanted to renew the lease was the indication to us that it was capable of supporting oyster production. That's just how the department's always handled it. We've never had the labor force capable to go out and evaluate the thousands of leases that we have. And so if a person wanted to renew that lease, that was our indication that it was capable of supporting oyster cultivation and production. So a couple of years ago, the legislature directly appropriated us some funds.
The amount?
I think it was $2.5 million to develop a process by which every year we evaluate those renewals for the capability for oyster production. And so what we did is we contracted with several firms to basically give us their proposal of how they would go about doing that on a year-by-year basis. And we evaluated all of those different proposals. We settled on 3 different firms. We had them take it a step further and develop a method. And so 2 of them are more mathematical models based on a lot of different data, including coastal restoration data, salinity data, things like that. And so we've got those 3 methods. We're now in the process of contracting with those firms to take this next year's sets of leases and run it through their methods and return to us the answers, so to speak, on the 600 or 700 or so renewals that we have coming up as to what their methods, their models tell us in terms of predicting oyster cultivation or oyster production on those lease renewals. the step after that would be to sit down with the industry and say, this is what our information shows. Do you have any other information that would be to the contrary to it?
Well, two quick questions that I wanted to ask is, number one, every year we get the delinquent lease, and I wanted to know if the delinquent lease plays a part in if there's no request for renewal or delayed renewal. I know sometimes addresses change and things like that, but would those float to the top for examination would be number one. And number two, in the process of the 3 different mechanisms that you're now going out, has there been any reporting to the OSHA task force? Has that been not as of yet?
We have not. We have not gone to them yet with our methods. We are just simply running the methods right now, and then we'll sit down with the industry at that time with the results so that they could review those results and say, okay, your results may show that this lease is not likely to be productive in the next 15 years, but we have information to show to the contrary. And so, and then at that point, it would be an administrative decision of the agency as to whether we would take that information and make a step to non-renew a certain lease.
Thank you. Mr. Garrett, Wildlife and Fisheries prides itself on being a self-generated agency, not coming here and asking for money every year. Appreciate that. Y'all pay y'all game wardens well from funds generated from fees, fines, and I would imagine oyster leases.
My appreciation, so the oyster lease is a $3 per acre.
Per year?
And yes, annually.
In 15-year chunks?
They're paid annually.
Per year, they pay annually per year, even though the lease is for 15 years.
Before Rep. Reiser yells at me, Cole Garrett, General Counsel, Wildlife and Fisheries. Yeah. So, and my appreciation, and Patrick can correct me on this, but I think that money is earmarked towards the Oyster Resource Fund, which pays for just kind of the research and administration of our oyster program, as well as kind of promotion and marketing that the Oyster Task Force does.
How much does that bring in on an annual basis? I know you have 8,000 leases. I got the spreadsheet up. I could easily add the acres and multiply it by 3 if I wanted to.
I'll trust your engineer math over my lawyer math. I don't know if
you don't know. Okay, I could do that offline. We all want to get out of here, and I appreciate y'all taking the time, Dr. Melisson. I appreciate you taking the time to explain what you did. I have more questions. I just wanted to let y'all know where my concern is going forward, and seeing that the $2.5 million of allocated money for this project moves forward and it doesn't stay in stasis anymore, that we get a product out from it, is what I'm gonna be driving for.
I'll quickly and hesitantly add a little more context to Patrick's testimony. So there was litigations decades ago where LDWF did try to not renew a lease for reasons. I think those reasons were oil and gas related. Courts came in and said, no, look, it says specifically in your statutes that the lone reason you should not do this is if they're incapable of cultivation. That's what the statute says. So we've been reluctant, to not renew leases, and at 15-year term and the fluctuations that Dr. Melancon's talking about for salinity, that's kind of why we use that conservative approach. When people come in and make a request, they're telling us we think it's capable of cultivation over the next 15 years.
And even though these water bottoms are owned by the state and leased by all these great oystermen, Mr. Banks made it clear to me that, as Dr. Melisson said, the investment put down on the Gulch actually gives them some rights to that investment, and it's not just a landlord kicking you out of the apartment. The improvements you've made to the apartment, you could take with you as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. The law allows them a certain amount of time to come in and remove those.
Understood. Which would lend credit to not messing with the terms of the lease and making them shorter or anything like that.
If I may just put my ecology hat on for just a minute.
Please do.
This Gulch, even after a dredge, an oyster dredge, or rake as we call it now, is not completely efficient to get every piece of Gulch or every oyster. A lot of that Gulch actually stays in perpetuity. and it is incredible habitat for
That's
a
it,
lot
fisheries
of estuarine
habitat,
critters.
yeah. Well aware of it, well aware of the habitat. Mr. Acting Chair, I'm done.
Okay. Representative Zarang.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. Appreciate the information, appreciate your presentation, and one of the things in terms of, you talk about the harvest of oysters, and in fact, because of the work that's involved, I mean, there was an attempt to actually move it into the Department of Agriculture because it's more equate to farming than it is to actually fisheries, but that's just an argument for another day. But my question, you indicate or showed on your slides the reduction on public leases. You would attribute that to what?
Fresh water.
Fresh water, okay, because of their location. One of the things I wanted to ask too, and I know it's not specific, but it is indirectly related to the issue, is maximizing the harvest. If we're going to focus, and before I ask, I want to ask Patrick, I didn't hear when your discussion, the results and when should we expect that you would be able to take it to the task force and maybe be able to have that information from
I'm sorry. The timing for us is to be able to take it to the task force sometime in late summer with the results from these models, and so that they can provide their input, and then we have the model results, we have the input from the industry, and then the administration of the agency makes the decision as to how to move forward at that point.
Okay.
Prior to the renewal season for the 27 renewals.
Right. Okay. So we hopefully by the end of this year we'll have had gone through one iteration of presenting it to the task force, having them look at it and comment on it.
That's correct.
Okay. So that maybe we could address any concerns or issues next session. And not to put you guys on the spot, because I think it's important. Dr. Earl, I don't get you up at the table much often, so I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity. And if we're talking about the resource and maximizing it, to maximize, and if you look at the other states, to maximize fecundity within the oyster population or harvest on private leases, all other states have a minimum size of 3 inches on private leases. We don't have, the only one that doesn't is Florida, and it's mostly for the looking at the small market for the boutique oysters is what I was searching for, the boutique oysters, and so they don't have, but I think Alabama, Mississippi, Texas have 3 inches on private leases. My question is, and I know, and I'm not suggesting that because I think Brad and Mitch should probably have me shot if I understand it. I know it's a concern, but you did say we were blessed, and we are, in that wouldn't it be in the best interest, and not to put you on the spot itself, but in terms of the productivity for the oysters harvest and the best interest of the resource, that we consider within that putting a size limit on private leases as well, to look at the potential harvest to maximize that benefit that we do have, that we are so blessed?
I have to keep my state hat on and be objective. I would say at this particular time, because we're not recruitment limited and we have an abundance of oysters during wet year, dry years, or whatever, we're blessed with that. You always look at husbandry in terms of recruitment and ability to have that next year crop based on the female, the eggs. Oysters are both male and female. Most oysters are male. About 98% of oysters are male when they're first developing, and they actually turn into a female when they get to be about 1.5 inches, 2 inches in size. And I would say, as long as we're not having the recruitment issue, that fishermen generally don't harvest more than a 2.5-inch oyster or larger oyster to begin with. Some fishermen only like the larger oysters. But to be competitive in the market for the best price with the half-shell trade, that 2.5 to 3-inch oyster becomes very important in terms of the economic aspects of a business model. So without having an issue with recruitment, I would say at this time, I think a 3-inch on the private lease
is not
And I'm not
something
suggesting
that-
three,
yeah,
believe me, no way. I'm just thinking maybe
I
like
don't-
2.5 or something with that, in terms of its ability, its sexual maturity and the potential to maximize benefit. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, I can tell you, by default, you're not going to get much of a 2.5-inch oyster, lower than a 2.5-inch oyster at the dock to begin with, because they have to be shucked. And if they're going to, well, the 2.5-inch oyster won't have to be shucked, but shuckers get paid by what they shuck. So the smaller the oyster, the more in a barrel, the more in a sack, and the more time it takes. So a shucker's not going to want anything less than a 2 and a 2.5-inch oyster. By the time you get that 2 to 2.5-inch oyster, you got about a 70% chance it's a female. So she's already spawning. My feeling would be that, just from what I've seen, you're putting another hat on law enforcement, which is going to be pretty tough. You're also putting another hat on the oystermen, having to monitor now the oysters they're bringing in, when they already by default at the shucking houses won't take anything less than 2 to 2.5 inches to begin with. Until we start having recruitment issues, I would say it's best to leave it alone.
Okay, no, I was just asking. I'm not trying to create another problem or another issue.
But
So-
it's just
Yeah.
my opinion if you're asking for an opinion.
Right. No, and that's what I was asking. So again, it's best to harvest those oysters that identify as females, is what
But I
you're
think I think if we start having recruitment issues, I think that is something that needs to be considered.
Okay.
Representative Bro.
Mr. Chairman, before we go to Representative Bro, I need to make it clear that when I spoke in terms of private leases, I'm talking about private leases that are leased from the state at that $3 per acre.
Okay, so noted for the record.
Not private lands like.
Not private lands.
Representative Bro, you have a live mic.
Thank you, Acting Chair. Real quick here, I just want to clarify some things. Did I hear earlier that the oyster division is basically self-supported?
That's correct, Rep. We collect rental fees from the oyster leaseholder each year, $3 an acre. That generates about $1.2 million on 400,000 acres. That money is directly put back into operations of the oyster leasing section, as well as a lot of our monitoring and biological activities that we do out in the field.
All right. And were those monies also the $2.5 million that you discussed earlier, or was that a separate appropriation?
That's a separate, that was an appropriation by the legislature into that same fund, but it was not self-generated money.
And was there some type of time period that this was supposed to be done, or
No, sir.
It was just an appropriation, hey, go
It
do
was
this,
just a
and when you do
one-year
it, you do it.
appropriation into the fund, and it made no other stipulations, and we've been working on it ever since we got that money.
Thank you. And then just my understanding of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're talking about, potentially reducing the survey period from 15 to 6 or what have you, whatever year, do not the oyster leaseholds themselves that the actual harvester signs with the state, do they not have specific terms in there? And one of those terms being that if there is a coastal restoration project, that leasehold can be terminated for that purpose and that purpose alone, correct?
There is both statutory and contractual protections for coastal restoration and implementation of those projects. And as Patrick mentioned earlier, they do go through the OLACP process and buy leases out sometimes. I would defer any questions on that process.
I understand that. And that OLACP process, that prevents a lot of litigation or whatnot and everything, because it's kind of a set process that determines the value of whether the leasehold's productive or not productive, what have you.
I believe there's a process for it. That's my appreciation of it, but I'd hesitate to answer.
And then, so the terms in those leaseholds, if there was a extreme significant concern of, say, those leaseholds that Rep. Ogeron showed earlier in Neptune Pass, that leasehold needed to be terminated for a coastal restoration purpose, that could be done under the language that's been in leaseholds since the early 2000s.
There are legal mechanisms to do that, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Kerner.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chairman. Doc, so I think everything's kind of been asked and said, but it's just not feasible for a oyster fisherman to lease a piece of property and put all this investment into it and only have a 6-year lease. Is that correct?
I can only state that the work we've done in the past shows that if a fisherman is going to, I guess the bottom line is, a business model would not show that 6 years would be reasonable if you're going to invest particularly in culture.
I'll tell you this, man. I was a commercial fisherman out there fishing for 5 years alongside oyster fishermen. Y'all guys work hard. Y'all guys really work hard. And I think, people come from all over the world, and they come here to eat fresh Louisiana seafood, whether it's shrimp, whether it's oysters. And if something's not fixed, I'm not broken, let's don't try to fix it. If you need the 15 years to make the investment, then let's keep the 15 years. That's my opinion. So, look, I appreciate what y'all do. Y'all work hard. I've seen it. I have friends in that business. I tell you what, I thought fishing was hard. I went over there and worked with one of my buddies for a little while. But look, again, I support y'all guys, and hopefully we'll come up with something good.
Gentlemen, the board is clear. Thank you for giving information. The next I'll read in the cards of proponents that would like to speak, and those that are present and do not wish to speak. Mr. Ryan Lambert is present, would like to speak on behalf of House Bill 70, and Mr. Rick Owens is present in support but does not wish to speak. Please identify yourself at the mic and note that in your opening testimony you have 3 minutes and then questions, if any.
Yeah, Ryan Lambert. I'm a charter fishing guide and commercial fisherman. I do a lot of coastal restoration work. And, the Sportsman's Paradise is a culmination of a lot of things. The fisheries, the shrimp, crabs, waterfowl, oysters. Oysters are a big part of it. Everybody loves oysters. I had oysters at my lodge last night. But we cannot let our state go. As you see, every number is declining as we go. The waterfowl has been the lowest it's been in 3 years, and waterfowl hunters work very, very hard to get that, along with the shrimps. Everybody works hard. If you're working off the public resource, you're working hard, but it's depleting. If an oyster fisherman gets a lease at 20 years old, a young guy, 18, 20, he's only going to renew it 3 times in his lifetime. Louisiana can't wait that long. In 15 years, we lose 240 square miles of land every 15 years without a hurricane. 16 square miles a year we're losing. We've lost 2,400 square miles thus far. The whole Barataria estuary is null and void of aquatic vegetation. That's why our numbers of waterfowl are depleting as they are. Our speckled trout and redfish, that's what I do for a living. Our numbers, our limits have been taken down. I can't even catch a limit on my boat. Everything is depleting, and we're going to have to get together and do something about it. The particular area that Representative Orgeron was talking about is where I did the last project I did with Ducks Unlimited. It cost $107,000 to extinguish those leases that haven't had an oyster on them for 25 years. We're not talking about productive leases and hurting anybody that's put millions of dollars in all the work they have into those leases. I'm out there every day. I know what they're doing. They're working hard. They're spending a lot of money. It's a great industry. I'm talking about litigious leases that people are renewing that don't have oysters, haven't had an oyster in 25 years. Why are you renewing it? They got trees growing on it. There's a marsh growing on top of it. You can no longer have oyster there, so why are we renewing those leases? And if they come up every 15 years, we can't extinguish those leases. So a 6-year period would be a lot better for coastal restoration. It's not good for the whole state because the whole state's not growing land like the east side of the river. So wouldn't it be better for the Oyster Task Force and CPRA to come together and get rid of that instead of all this hoopla? That's what it's all about. It's saving Louisiana, saving the oyster industry. Get together, fix it. If it's not conducive to growing oysters, drop the leases. Right now, don't have to wait 5 years, 6 years, 15 years. Do what's right for the state. So I'm for the 6 years just because it'll help hurry that process.
All right, thank you, sir. Members, any questions? There are no questions. Thank you for testimony. Members, now we're going to move to those in opposition to House Bill 770, and I'm going to read the cards in of those that are in opposition. The president would like to speak against the bill. Mr. Brad Robin, Louisiana Oyster Task Force. Alicia Perez, Havana Oyster Coalition. And forgive me for any names I mispronounce. Mitch and Jurich, Louisiana Oyster Task Force. If you'd come, those three would come forward.
You go first.
Please identify yourself, please.
Yes, Mr. Acting Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Mitch Jurasich. I'm a third-generation oyster farmer of Plaquemines Parish. I own leases throughout the whole state of Louisiana, from Terrebonne Parish to pretty much the Mississippi line. I'm also chairman of the Louisiana Oyster Task Force. I'm not going to try to reiterate what Mr. Melanson went over because I know we're short on time. But I do have a couple things that I want to bring up. When you look at, the oyster leasing system and coastal restoration, I can speak on the oyster lease acquisition and compensation program because I've had several leases go through that program. When you look at a pie chart of a coastal restoration project, when you look for the oyster lease acquisition compensation money, it's a very, very thin slice of the cost of that whole project. And the system works. They come in, they evaluate your oyster lease. If it's got market oysters, you get more money. If it's barren water bottoms, you get a lot less money. I've had checks for oyster leases come in at $35. But you know what? I waive it, let them have it for the benefit of the coast. Let's go to coastal restoration, because I heard Mr. Lambert's testimony about how he's a big advocate of coastal restoration. But how much money did he put out of his pocket to build the coast? You heard Mr. Melanson talk about 10,000 tons of couch material. I'm one of those guys. And you know what happens when I put 10,000 tons of couch material a year on the water bottoms? Who's a coastal advocate there? I'm armoring that water bottom. I'm building the coast. I'm raising the bottom. I'm putting something back, and you heard the cost. That doesn't come from no federal dollars or no NGOs or none of that. That's coming from us hard-working oyster farms who want to continue to produce oysters for generations to come. And with that, in 1910 is when this 15-year lease came into effect. And in that 1910 Act, I think it's 189 Act, something like that, yes, Act 189, back in 1910. The reason for the 15 years was to give sustainability and longevity to the oyster farmers who are creating oyster reefs on barren water bottoms, because that's what we lease from the state, barren water bottoms. A lot of times you have less than 20% of that water bottom may have reef material. Now let's go to private land leasing, because I want to cover that. Private land doesn't encourage investment because you're leasing from most of the time oil companies. These oil companies don't want you to invest because they're going to come in at any time and they could do any kind of work they want.
I yield my 3 minutes to him.
So what
If you give yours,
happens?
that'll be the total. So if you allow the chair to permit it, let's go.
Okay, so that's why, it's 5 years, on private land leases, because, at any time, this company, it doesn't have to go around the oyster lease. It can go right through it. So nobody's going to invest in that. That's the difference between the state-owned leases that we have and the private. That's why we need 15 years. We need 40 years. We need 45 years. Believe me, I've got leases, since 1920 that are still producing oysters today. I understand Mr. Lambert's concern, but also when we showed that map, the fractured east bank of the Mississippi River, right now, I sit on a water task force with the state. The state is looking, what can we do to keep saltwater intrusion from reaching New Orleans? You know what the Corps is looking at? Closing off that whole fractured east bank of the river. Now, The leases may not be productive now, but if we close that fractured east bank of the river, now these leases may become productive again because now you stopped all that freshwater intrusion. Now, they may be silted up, but it doesn't stop AOC. And if I'm not mistaken, I think AOC formed, what they get, about 10-year lease?
Year by year right now.
Okay, I thought it said 10 years. But anyway, capable of producing oysters is a big word that we talked about with wildlife and fisheries. Any water bottoms throughout this state at some given time can become capable of producing oysters. You heard Dr. Malonson talk about wet, dry years. I've seen it where we can grow oysters all the way out to Grand Isle. I've seen when we had to be all the way into Little Lake. And I've seen it in between. Last time we produced oysters in the center of Barataria Bay was the mid-90s because everything was conducive for it. Not only that, the public oyster grounds were very fertile back then, and we used to get our seed oysters and we could plant those oysters there. The reason the private leaseholds have so much more production now is because of the investment that we put into that. That culch material we're constantly putting down. The state can tell you when they make a culch plant in the public grounds, that culch plant is very fertile. It grows oysters. The existing shell around that culch plant stays barren. So you have to constantly build and invest money to make money. And as Representative Kerner said, you give us 6 years, we go on a take. We're no longer going to invest. We're not going to invest in your coast. We're not going to invest because 6 years is not going to give us enough time to recoup anything. Even if we get that crop back, one crop is not what it takes to sustain our oyster industry. We have to be generational, and that's what we've done, and we've been experts at it. And I really appreciate if y'all would, move unfavorably on this issue. Thank you.
I have a question by Vice Chair Ogeron.
Nope. Thank you. In light of everything, I appreciate what you just said. I know we've had conversations talking about it in the past. To Mr. Lambert, he does put money out of his own pocket. I know that for a fact, for advocacy and stuff like that. And I appreciate his time. I think he walked out. But nonetheless, I appreciate everybody that came here. If we could wrap this up, and I know that there may be people who absolutely feel that they have to speak. You saying no, but
I think we covered most of it.
We do it. If we could get to the point where I could close, and I think we could take this home.
I want to make one more suggestion.
Yes.
Because I know me and you had a really good conversation about 3 weeks ago, and I think you learned a lot from what I had to say. And that's what we're here for. If you want to learn more about the oyster industry, reach out to us. Reach out to us. We want to teach you. We want to teach each and every one of you just how we operate so we can look at this different in the future. But one last thing about the OLACP. They can come in at any time during that term if there's a project, and they could take that lease, survey it, take the portion they need to build the property, build land. At any given time, it's not at the end of 15 years, so they could take it 1 year after it's been renewed. So I think, with that being in place, I think this is, I think, as we said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Thank you. Go ahead, you want to wrap up?
Not yet. Next witness, please.
Oh, Mr. Brad, you can go ahead.
You want to yell?
You don't have to. You can wave if it's already been said.
Yeah.
You're not required to speak.
I would say something, Brad. Yeah, let me.
Brad, I'll give you my 3 minutes.
You've already yielded your time.
All right.
I'm giving my 3 minutes. He can have my 3 minutes.
All right. So we have three in opposition. Ms. Perez has yielded her time back to you, so you're back live again.
Appreciate it. I'm glad for y'all listening to what we're doing. Some of the questions you're talking about the primary area in Biloxi Marsh right now where Dr. Malonson is me, one of the guys putting 10,000 for the last 10 years. The area we call the Golden Triangle right now produces more oysters on the east side of the river than ever. Was primary dead for 25 years. Dead for 25 years. You know what? I paid my dues. Every year I paid. Right now, if I'd have left that lease go,
those leases go, we wouldn't have oysters on the east side of the river. We are paying leases that are being intruded by salt or fresh water. We still pay. We pay every year. Because the minute the time opens up, we gain it back. And the thing about this, guys, 99% of the oysters sold in Louisiana are us. The question you ask is why about the public and the private? Reason why, look at the investment the private sectors is putting in the water. 1 year alone on the east side of the river, we put 200,000 tons of rock. Now, you know what? That's way more than Mr. Lambert did. But you know what? The thing about it, not only we benefiting off of this, the recreational fishers, the charter captains are out there fishing our reefs. They benefiting off of that. So we need to be recognized what we do. If you give me a 5-year lease, no, guys, I'm not going anywhere. Thank you.
Representative Lacombe for a question.
For the gentleman that, one of y'all two is talking about putting that much, so it's like $600,000, $700,000 a year into, simple question, if a hurricane comes through with massive amounts of, I guess, tidal water, flow, current, does that wash all that away?
In some cases, it does, but I'm going to explain two different things right quick.
Okay.
Man-made disasters are hard to recover from. Natural disasters, oystermen have been very resilient throughout the decades. We've learned to cope and survive. If we do get hit, we'll go back and rebuild the water bottoms that are damaged. But a lot of times, the work and effort we put in, it may set us back 2 or 3 years, and that's another reason where 15 years does not, it has to be there, because we may get that kind of situation. We may not be able to move back home like Katrina, for a year before we can even get back to putting work into our oyster grounds.
And same question goes if they open the Bon Carré spillway. Usually that's because the water is extremely high, and so you see massive amounts of currents rolling through. Does that also, I know you get freshwater intrusion, but the currents, does it wash away the?
By the time the currents get to the oyster growing areas, they're spread out, but it's the fresh water that does the damage that wipes out the oyster populations during the Bonnie Carré opening.
Because where I represent an area that we have the Morganza spillway, and they open it occasionally, not nearly as much as that. So, but they've opened it twice in the last 20 years where I'm at, and I duck hunt right kind of adjacent to it. I mean, when they open those gates, it's a massive amount of current. I mean, they have right now. They opened it a few years back, and it blew up a pond on the other side about 60 foot deep along the edge. So I've seen the currents. I mean, there's boulders, massive boulders way into the spillway region. I'm just wondering if y'all putting all that down, is the current just washing it away?
So you realize the Bonnie Carré flows through Lake Pontchartrain before it gets to Lake Bourne. The productive oyster leases don't begin until you get into Lake Bourne, a little further out in the lake. So by that time, the currents are slower and spread out.
Okay, because I do recreational fish. We fish a lot, saltwater fishing, but not in that particular area. Very occasionally. So, but yeah, thank you all for the things, because we do catch a lot of trout and redfish and stuff on top
The
of it.
salinity, when it opens, the salinity changes so much, and it depends how long it's open. Unfortunately, we got to save New Orleans, and we're the guns, and it puts us back 4 years, 5 years, and we got to still plan.
Okay. Well, look, thank y'all. I appreciate asking the question. I know we're on time sensitive here.
All right. Representative Ogeron.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. All right, I know we got the normal procedure would be for him to read through all the cards in opposition, but I'll kind of cut this short, let's just say that, so we could get out of here. everybody. I appreciate everybody coming, showing your passion for the industry. Things I didn't talk about was how long we've been at $3 an acre and possibly increasing that. Don't need to discuss that. Things like how many acres each entity can have, and how I get emails that list 23 different entities that they're holding or inactive for. The reason and rationale for that, we're not going to get into that. But I appreciate y'all coming and giving us y'all passionate passionate information on this particular topic. I'm going to follow up with Mr. Banks on this report. I really want to be there and work with Chairman Jursich and the Oyster Task Force on seeing this forward. And for the oystermen, like I said, I appreciate y'all coming. I think putting in your mind where you want to be is keeping everything exactly as it is. I would ask that you kind of maybe put that off to the side and start walking around the idea of how to basically just change or tweaking the system to be able to allow the coastal restoration projects to move a little bit easier with whatever process on the viability that he comes out with this money that we already spent to figure it out. And with that, I would like to pose a motion to voluntarily defer this bill.
All right. Vice Chair Ogeron has made the motion to voluntarily defer. Any opposition to that? The bill has voluntarily deferred. Everyone that's in attendance and here present in this room and overflow room, I have your card that has been filled out. It will be recorded that you were in opposition to this bill, so note that it will be recorded. Thank you, everyone, for your time. We have any other business today?
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Ogeron to adjourn. No other business for us. We stand adjourned.
Thank you all. Thank you, members. That's a palate cleanser from Eminent Domain and a warm up for pokies. You gotta put it book in. What's that?